Good evening, everyone. Calling to order the February 3rd meeting of Summit Common Council. Madam Clerk, would you please read the adequate notice and compliance statement?
Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by the City Clerk's Office in preparation of the Council Annual Meeting Notice dated December 17, 2025, which was properly distributed and posted per statutory requirements. Please be advised that fire exits are to my right, your left, and at the back of the room. The city has a listening system to assist the hearing impaired. If anyone needs hearing assistance, please obtain the system at the dais and return it thereafter.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Would you please call the roll?
Mr. Boyer?
Present.
Mr. Christofoli?
Here.
Ms. Kalmanson?
Here.
Ms. Landman?
Here.
Ms. Laceracina?
Here.
Mr. Pulaski?
Here.
President Toth.
Here. Okay, so we...
God bless you.
Absolutely. I'm going to ask Layla Green to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. May I have,
Would you like me to read the?
yes, I was on the wrong sheet on my computer.
Sorry.
Would you, Madam Clerk, would you please read the explanatory note regarding closed session and the explanatory note regarding hearings and comments?
A closed session meeting is authorized by state statute, was announced and held prior to the start of this meeting, and the known items for discussion were listed on the published closed session agenda. Please be advised that council meetings are broadcast live on Comcast channels 34 and 36 and Verizon channel 30, and rebroadcast on Thursdays and Saturdays on HTTV on Comcast 36 and Verizon 33. When invited to speak, please come to the lectern, clearly state your name and address, spell your last name, and speak into the podium microphone so that your comments can be understood by all and properly recorded. Whenever an audience or council member reads from a prepared statement, please give or email a copy to the city clerk at cityclerk@cityofsummit.org. To help facilitate an orderly meeting and to permit all to be heard, please limit your comments to no more than 3 minutes in length. Unless you are using an electronic device to follow the meeting agenda or need it for professional emergency contact purposes, please turn it off. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk, and I'm going to expand a bit on her note about hearings and comments. And this will facilitate a smoother process, particularly for those watching remotely. So if you're seated in the first 2 rows, please remain silent. Anything you say can be picked up by the recording microphones, and it makes it difficult for those watching from home to hear the official proceedings. And also, please don't cross at the front of the room, and only use the center aisle to approach the lectern. The cameras are motion sensitive, and they'll turn away from the speaker to pick up your movement. The 3-minute limit on public comments corresponds to a little bit less than a single typewritten page. And if you are leaving your written remarks, please put your name on them and place them in the box near the lectern when you're done. And with that, let's proceed to the city's business. Do I hear a motion to approve the regular and closed session meetings of January 20th?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. I think it's time for our reports. Will you lead us off, Madam Mayor?
Indeed, thank you. Good evening, everyone. I want to start out with a big shout out for our Department of Public Works for clearing our streets in record time after that monstrous snowstorm. Crews worked through the night in our central business district so shoppers could park and support local businesses. Yeah. We're unfortunately not out of the woods yet, given the groundhog predicted 6 more weeks of winter, but thankfully we have an amazing DPW. They work really hard. They're out there while the rest of us are sleeping, so thank you to them. Please give them a wave or a shout if you see them around town. We have a couple of great events coming up that I hope you'll join. This Friday at the Community Center, they're hosting a Boston Tea Party in honor of our country's 250th birthday. There will be a popsicle stick boat making contest, a make-your-own tea bag station to toss into the kiddie pool, which is our Boston Harbor, and a full tea party with scones and sandwiches. The tea party for adults is noon to 1:30, and the kids' tea party is 3:30 to 5 after school. The kids' program will include readings written and performed by Washington Elementary School IDEAS students on the history of the Boston Tea Party. Registration is free at summitcommunityprograms.com. Then on February 9th, we'll celebrate Black History Month with music, performances, and a reading by Jefferson IDEAS students on the role Black soldiers played in the Revolutionary War, including the local history connected to Summit. This annual event is a wonderful way to honor Black History Month. I also want to recognize the Summit Chinese American Association for a fantastic Lunar New Year kickoff this past weekend. Performances, costumes, and music and food were terrific. And this Saturday, there will be another Lunar New Year celebration at the library and the YMCA. Registration is already closed because these events fill up quickly, but we'll be sure to share videos and photos on our social media page. So check those out coming up this weekend. Please also be on the lookout for the new Summit View newsletter, which has been mailed to residents. It includes an emergency contact sheet you can hang up for easy access to important numbers, along with helpful hints on protecting your home. And finally, I want to highlight a scholarship opportunity for Summit High School juniors and seniors through the New Jersey State League of Municipalities. These are it's 3 $1,000 scholarships, and they're available statewide through the Lewis Bay Second Future Municipal Leaders Scholarship. And last year, we had a Summit High School student who was one of just 3 statewide winners, and she won $1,000. So we hope we can keep this tradition going. The deadline to apply is March 9th, and full details are available on the cityofsummit.org. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And now on to Ms. Baldwin for the city administrator's report. Tammy?
Thank you, Council President. Good evening, everyone. The Summit Free Market, the next one will be held on Saturday, February 14th from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. at the transfer station. Summit residents with a parking disposable permit can attend and browse donated items, take what they want for free, and also donate. There are donation guidelines available at cityofsummit.org/free market. City offices will be closed on February 16th. That day is also a parking holiday in Summit with no fees required for on-street parking or parking in municipal lots and garages. So hopefully everybody runs downtown. Trash and recycling collections are not affected by the holiday. And lastly, a friendly reminder for all residents, we still have quite a bit of winter left, as the mayor said, before we get on to spring. So when you have a chance, please review the city's snow guidelines that are available on the website homepage at cityofsummit.org/snow. Remember that per the city ordinance, residents have 24 hours from the end of a snowfall to clear your sidewalk. Doing so will help keep our city safe for pedestrians and students that use these sidewalks to get to school, work, and other places around town after a snowstorm. Thank you for your cooperation, and hopefully we'll get to spring, maybe sooner than 6 weeks if we're lucky. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Baldwin. And I want to add my thanks to the Department of Public Works for their hard work during last week's snowstorm. These folks are working incredibly hard hours. They're working 12-hour shifts to keep our roads passable. And they really are the unsung heroes of Summit. And so please join us virtually this Thursday evening at 7 p.m. for our Facebook Live Q&A. I'm going to sit down with Mayor Fagan, and we're going to discuss the process of how we bring issues up for discussion here at our council meetings, how the committees operate, and how residents can reach out when they have a request for council to consider. It's all virtual, so you can watch from home. If you have specific questions you'd like addressed, please submit it to our Chief Communications Officer at pressoffice@cityofsummit.org. You'll also have the ability to pose questions in the comment section during the Facebook Live, and we'll address them as part of our discussion. If you can't make it, it will be posted to the city's YouTube channel the following day. Behind the scenes, the Finance Committee's been working very hard on the 2026 budget. We've talked in the past about some of those challenges. The plan is to introduce it at the end of March or the beginning of April, with the vote to take place 4 weeks later. And as always, the budget snapshot will be mailed to all city residents to break it down for you. And finally, next week, I have to move my regular office hours from Monday to Tuesday. It's still from 3 to 5 p.m. in the council conference room just outside the chambers to the right as you walk in. So please stop by or reach out to me to meet at another time. And now, Councilmember Laceracina, over to you.
It's me, actually.
I'm sorry,
It's okay.
Councilmember. I've been looking at the wrong direction.
No
I'm
worries.
so sorry.
Thank you, Council President. Tonight, I would like to welcome Ms. Layla Green to present the Historical Minute about an important figure in Summit's history and in honor of Black History Month. Layla is a sophomore at Summit High School and an active member of the Black Student Union. I'd also like to thank Mr. Michael Mays, counselor at Summit High School and advisor to the BSU, for nominating Layla for this honor. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Councilmember. Good evening, everyone. My name is Layla Green. I'm a sophomore at Summit High School and a proud member of the Black Student Union. It is such an honor to be here today and to speak about an incredible African-American woman who played an important part in Summit's Black history and culture. So what is a legacy? A legacy can be the lasting impact someone leaves behind through their actions, values, and commitment to others. When learning about the life of Florence Spearing Randolph, it is clear that she left behind so much more than just a legacy. She left behind a powerful example of leadership, service, and strength. Florence Spearing Randolph was born in Charleston, North Carolina, and later spent much of her life serving the Summit community. After graduating the Charleston Avery Normal Institution, she moved to Jersey City to work as a dressmaker. While living there, she became involved with the African Methodist Episcopal Zion Church, a church that supported African Americans during a time where many were excluded and discriminated against. As her passion for helping others grew, Florence Spearing Randolph became deeply involved in community service and leadership. She worked with many organizations focused on faith, equality, and women's rights, and she even helped establish organizations that uplifted African American women across New Jersey. Through her dedication and leadership, she earned great respect and recognition, including an honorary Doctor of Divinity degree, making her the first woman to ever receive that honor from Livingstone College in North Carolina. In 1925, she moved to Summit to become the lead reverend at Wallace Chapel AME Zion Church. During her 21 years there, she helped the church grow and strengthen the community by creating programs and spaces that supported families and residents throughout Summit. Her work had a lasting impact that can still be felt today. Florence Spearing Randolph's life shows us what is possible when someone follows their beliefs and uses their voice to serve others. Her courage, determination, and commitment continues to inspire us to make a difference in our own community. Her legacy reminds us that leadership and change can start with one person, a mindset that Summit embodies every day through their events, organizations, and people. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Green. And the next time you pass Wallace AME Zion, stop and read the historic plaque in front of the church. It explains some about what you've just said. So, thank you.
Excellent job. I'm the pastor now, so you did good.
Now we're on to our presentation about the affordable housing plan that will control for the next 10 years. With us, we have our affordable housing attorney, Nancy Holm, our planner, Tom Behrens, and backing them up is our land use official, Augusto Del Maso. And give me just a moment to set the table here for this, because our professionals are going to present the information about our most recent affordable housing plan for the period 2025 to 2035. After the presentation, audience members will be able to ask questions. We'll all be taking copious notes of all the questions you're asking, with the expectation that they'll be developed into a series of Q&As for the city website. So please try to make these questions. And the 3-minute rule will apply. Once we have finished with the audience questions, I expect we may all be ready for a 5-minute break. And I am springing this on Nancy and Tom. If there are fast answers to common questions, they can address them then after the break, and then council members can ask questions. And just please bear in mind, this can be difficult stuff. We are all neighbors. There are things in here on which we're probably going to disagree, but we live in community, and we all want what's best for Summit. You know, remember, our children attend schools together. We worship, we shop, we enjoy recreation together, and let's bear that in mind. And with all of that, over to you, Nancy and Tom.
Thank you very much. Mayor Fagan, Council President Toth, and members of the council, thank you very much for having us tonight. Can everybody hear me okay? No. Okay then, hold on one second. How's that? Is that better?
Much
Better, okay. I'm usually pretty loud when I get going, so hopefully that works out. So, as many of you know, we were before the planning board and the council in June of this past year, based on the amendments to the Fair Housing Act for what is now round 4 of the affordable housing requirements in the state of New Jersey. We had to adopt and file a plan by June 30th of 2025. That started a series of events where the housing plan was challenged by Fair Share Housing Center, Russo Development Company, and Incline Capital. They had until August 31st of 2025 to file those challenges. Once that happened, the program took over and scheduled mediation sessions that were confidential. And the program, through the special adjudicator and Judge Miller, who was our assigned program judge. He was formerly a Mount Laurel judge in Somerset County, I believe, and he is now retired. But he was appointed to head the Affordable Housing Dispute Resolution Program, known as the program for short. Since the challenge deadline, we mediated pretty much until December 23rd of 2025, and actually we still are ironing out a few details in one of the settlement agreements, which culminated in my submission to the program on December 23rd, 2025, that outlined the settlement between the city and Fair Share Housing Center, and also the city and Russo Development Company. We were not able to come to a mediated agreement with Incline Capital. However, we have, using mechanisms that were previously in our June plan, as well as some new mechanisms, which we will get into, we were able to satisfy the entire round 4 obligation of 345 credits. That's important, credits. We did this utilizing, once we got to the point where we knew what we could settle with everyone, we looked and saw that we could maximize our bonus points and satisfy our entire obligation of 345, which we will get into as we go. But I do want to make an announcement that earlier today, Judge Miller recommended that the vicinage judge approve our amended housing element fair share plan that we will go over tonight. Recommended the dismissal of Incline Capital's challenge to our plan, where they had proposed a project that is 152 units an acre that is being dismissed. It's being recommended that it be dismissed. And I just wanted to read what Judge Miller said about the City of Summit, and really quickly. This program member, which is Judge Miller, has reviewed and considered all of the submissions filed in this matter by all of the parties. This member is swayed by the adjudicator's recommendation to approve the plan, as well as the city's efforts to reach settlements, which the Russo challenger, and particularly the settlement with Fair Share Housing Center, the nonprofit entity charged with representing the interests of the low and moderate income community. The program finds that the city's plan, as it will be amended in accordance with its settlements with Russo and Fair Share Housing Center, and as described in detail in its council's most recent correspondence to the program on December 23rd, 2025, satisfies the city's fourth round obligation, along with a surplus toward future rounds. Even though the city did not fully accommodate the requests of Challenger Incline, this program members view that the plan should be approved and the incline challenge should be dismissed. As such, this program member recommends approval of the city's housing element and fair share plan and that its immunity from builder's remedy suits be continued. So that's it's much longer than that, but I thought that was some of the good stuff. To move forward, I did get notification from Fair Share Housing Center as I was driving up here that we have finalized a majority of the details. He did say that he has a few minor tweaks, so I'm hoping that those are very minor, and we will be submitting that by the end of the week this week. And we'll be submitting that to the court so that everything is before the court, and then Judge Lindeman, who is the Matt Laurel Matt Laurel judge for Union County, will have everything before him, and we can move forward. So if we will go through an outline of what Judge Miller recommended for approval now. So if you want to, okay. So those of you who've been following along this whole time, in June we submitted the plan. The RDP from the third round, which was a combination of the prior round and the third round, we're in the fourth round now, of 36, did not change. And you'll see on this chart that these are all of the credits that go toward that 36 unit RDP. Next.
Excuse me, Ms. Holm.
Yeah.
Could you define RDP?
Oh, yes. So realistic development potential is what RDP stands for. I apologize. I know a lot of jargon, and I try not to use it all the time, but it's hard. So realistic development potential occurs when a city like Summit, who has very little vacant or developable land, can adjust their original number down based on what's available to be developed. So in round 3, the combination of the prior round and the third round, through an agreement with Fair Share, which was court approved in round 3, was we could develop 36, which we did, and all of those units are completed. And then what is left is called the unmet need. And what you do with that is you provide mechanisms such as overlay zones, a mandatory set-aside ordinance, things like that, that will capture development as it occurs. So, for instance, a mandatory set-aside ordinance, if there's a project with 5 units or more, one of those has to be affordable when they come in for approvals. So that's the difference between an RDP and your original obligation and the unmet need. So as you can see from this slide, our original obligation for both the prior round and third round combined was 567. And that was adjusted down to 36 based upon the vacant land that was available at the time. So, and that was agreed to by Fair Share Housing Center and approved by the court. So that did not change from the third round plan, and it did not change from the June plan. So as many people have discussed over the years, we have what we call a 50 new units obligation, and that was in our settlement agreement with Fair Share Housing Center in the third round. And what that was we were to facilitate the construction of 50 new units within the city, and there were certain parameters for that. I won't go into it because you can see it in our plan. But we agreed with Fair Share Housing Center in June of this year that these would be the projects that would contribute to that 50 unit goal. Those did not change. What did change were some timing of some pending projects, which is the Our House future group home. The city is going to work with Our House on giving them a parcel, which is block 3401, lot 36. Do you remember the address? What's the address? Yeah, yeah. 27 Edgewood, sorry, I didn't have that in the agreement, so I didn't remember it's hard to keep all of these addresses straight. So 27 Edgewood. Our house has not been able to go out and walk the property for weather-related reasons, but they are very excited about this opportunity, and obviously, you know, most group home providers look for already constructed single-family homes to rehabilitate. So we had to extend the deadlines a little bit so that they could do new construction. The other change will be for St. Teresa's. We had to create a new construction timetable because of some internal church issues that were unrelated to the development of this project. That is moving forward, and Fair Share agreed to that timetable, which is that our house would receive local approvals for construction by the end of 2026 and complete construction by the end of 2028. And then St. Teresa's, we have a construction timetable where they would receive local development approvals by July 1st of 2027, begin construction by the end of 2027, and by July 1st of 2028, we would update Fair Share on the progress of that project. Other than that, the rest of the 50 new unit requirement stayed the same. So the next slide. As I said before, we have an unmet need from the prior round and the third round. That remains based on our vacant land analysis. We did agree that all of the overlay zones will be amended to provide a flat 20% set aside of affordable units. The reason that it was 15% for rentals and 20% for sale units before was because it was an incentive to provide rental units, because we would get historically a 2-for-1 bonus credit for family rental units. That bonus credit was removed in the amended Fair Housing Act, so it's in the city's best interest to just get a 20% set aside where possible. So all overlay zones, regardless of whether any other changes are made to those specific overlay zones, will all have a 20% set aside required. Specifically, the city agreed with Fair Share to increase some of the densities in the overlay zones. Overlay Zone 1 is the Salerno Dwayne dealership. That overlay zone will be amended to permit up to 30 units an acre with a 20% set aside, with a mixed use component, optional mixed use component similar to the MBC zone that currently exists. Then the overlay zone 2, that is where Incline Capital's proposed projects were included. They are on the corner of Broad and Morris, right? Broad and Summit, okay. So they're at the corner. It's the gas station, auto body, and the TD Bank building was their challenge. And those specific sites within overlay zone 2 the overlay zone will be amended to permit up to 30 units an acre, up to 4 stories, comparable to the MBC zoning, only for those Incline Capital sites, and the rest of the parcels in that overlay zone will continue to permit a maximum of 3 stories, but will receive an increased density of 15 units an acre. Before that, it was 12 units an acre. Overlay zone 3 did not change, except to create a 20% set aside. And that one, we don't have a slide for that because it didn't change. Overlay zone 4 is the city's CRBD zone. Did I say that right? CRBD zone. Because this is the city's historic district, it will continue to be limited to a maximum of 3 stories. However, the density will be increased to 20 units an acre with a 20% set aside. Overlay Zone 5 is 25 DeForest Avenue. Fair Share in the city agreed that the overlay zone will be amended to allow for the conversion of existing office space in the footprint of the building itself to be converted into residential development with a 20% set aside, or it can be demolished and built in the current building footprint if that is more conducive to creating the residential units. So that will also be a 20% set aside. Overlay Zone 6 and 7 will stay the same. Overlay Zone 7 is the current 12-unit Habitat for Humanity project, so that has been, the construction has been completed on that site.
Excuse me again, Ms. Holm, could
Yes.
you explain what an overlay zone is? I'm seeing
Sure.
a few questioning faces in
Yes,
the
yes.
audience.
So overlay zones mean that the underlying zoning remains, and then there is additional zoning placed on top that a property owner can choose to utilize to redevelop. And what happens in unmet need is you provide incentives with higher densities in order to entice developers to create affordable units. So that is, those are all improvements to our unmet need. One thing to keep in mind, the Fair Housing Act, as it was amended, required that the city evaluate all of its overlay zones and ensure that they continue to be realistic. So this was a compromise that we had with Fair Share Housing Center that is part of our settlement. Now on to, yes, fourth round. So there are a lot of mechanisms, so we have it split into two tables here. What you'll see at the beginning is we have 42 credits that are units that have already been built or units that their affordability controls are expiring this round, and we will extend. That is a permitted mechanism to ensure that affordable units that have already been created by the city continue to remain affordable to low and moderate income households. So that is a total of 42 credits. There is the Harmon Holdings site, which was in the plan, the MBC zone, which was in the plan in June. Weaver Street, the improvements to the Housing Authority units, which is Weaver Street, Glenwood Place, and 77 of the Vito Gallo units for a total of 147. And then a vacant and abandoned properties ordinance. Those were all included in the June plan, either in the unmet need or in the RDP that we had for round 4. The new mechanisms to satisfy the remainder of our 345 credit obligation is 190 River Road, which is the Russo Development Company site, who filed a challenge. The Little Kings site, I know it's 791 to 795 Old Springfield Avenue that is currently pending before the planning board. We're receiving 1 unit from that. 180 River Road, the property owner approached the city in between the city adopting its plan and the challenge period, suggesting a conversion of the building itself into residential units, and then a rezoning of lots in Franklin Place for a townhome development, and also the Bristol Myers Squibb campus is currently on the market to be sold. So we had agreed with Fair Share Housing Center to create a minimum number of units on that. So before we get into the details, this map shows where each affordable project is located within the city. As you can see, it is not all concentrated in one area. It is scattered throughout the city, where developers have come in with projects. So we'll go on to discuss the Russo development. As I said before, Russo filed a challenge. In their challenge, they demanded 254 units. And we were able to settle with them for 198 units, 168 of which are market rate units, 30 are affordable units on site. There is shuttle service from this property to downtown, to the train station. They have provided 25 parking spaces for city use that can also use the shuttle service to go downtown. There is a $1 million contribution to the city's Affordable Housing Trust Fund. There is also $100,000 in landscaping improvements for the municipal golf course across the street from this project, a donation of a 1.8 acre site on Shunpike Road, and I said shuttle service as well. And as mentioning Shunpike, the city has agreed to use for veteran supportive housing. Supportive housing units are a 2-for-1 bonus scenario to incentivize supportive housing units, which is a dire need in the state of New Jersey. There's not enough. So there has been an incentive in the amended Fair Housing Act to provide such supportive housing. So all that is agreed to this far is that that Russo will donate the land to the city, and then a developer will be selected, and zoning will follow the developer selection. That's up to the city how it decides to select the developer. And there are no specific plans for any development there yet. So it is merely 25 veteran supportive housing units. Next is, as I said before, the Bristol-Myers Squibb campus. Much of the campus will be deed restricted for environmental reasons. However, there will be a decent size portion of land that could be used for residential development. We have agreed with Fair Share that we will provide a minimum of 20 affordable units on that site. We don't have, given that it's still in flux and that Bristol-Myers Squibb is still considering what developer they're going to sell that property to, that's the best we could do in that at this time, and the time constraints that we have, and Fair Share was fine with that minimum number of affordable units. As I said before, Little Kings has pending site plan application with the planning board. It's 6 units and will include 1 affordable unit. As I stated before, I got ahead of myself. 180 River Road, the property owner approached the city in between the adoption of the plan and the challenge period, expressing an interest in converting the existing building itself into an inclusionary residential development. That will yield 37 total units, including at least 8 affordable units. Franklin Place will be a rezoning of block 3401, lots 7 through 20, from the R5 zone to a new townhouse zone of 10 units an acre, 10 units an acre with a 20% set aside. And those are the new projects that were not in the June adopted plan. So just to outline where we are in the process, I went over it briefly before. The next phase of this exciting formula is on February 17th. The implementing ordinances will be introduced, and then the plan itself will be placed on file 10 days in advance. The amended plan will be placed on file 10 days in advance of the February 23rd Planning Board meeting, where there will be a public hearing, and the Planning Board will consider adoption of that amended plan. And it will also consider the consistency of those ordinances with the plan and which is a master plan amendment. And then all of the ordinances will return back to the council on March 3rd, where they will be considered on second reading for adoption. And then after that, I have the wonderful task of filing everything with the program no later than March 15th of this year. That is a statutory filing deadline, and it must be met or you lose your immunity. So, and immunity is from builder's remedy lawsuits. So that is the settlement agreement with Fair Share in a nutshell. Did I miss anything? No? Okay. So, did you want comments from council first or the public?
I think from the residents.
Okay.
Because I know this is a lot to absorb. This is not the only opportunity people will have to ask questions, but we are here, notebooks and keyboards at the ready. So if any resident would like to ask a question, please approach the podium, your name, tell us where you live, and please give us your questions.
My name is Rick Carbone. I live at 23 Baltusrol Road, formerly 14 Princeton Street. I'm a 68-year Summit resident, so I've seen a lot of stuff happen in this town, and I need more than 3 minutes, but I'll do my best to state my case. Obviously, I'm here because of the Shumpike Road project. I lived a half a block from where that stable is, and I grew up down there. So I have a couple questions. One, has the property been purchased?
So right now, ask all your questions, and then the council or the...
Well, because the answer to my question will lead to the next question, so good try, though. But seriously, has it been purchased? Y'all must know. And if it's been purchased, has it been donated back to the city? And if it's been donated back to the city, do you have to develop it,
It's
right? Because it doesn't have to be developed. I mean, the reason it's being done is because you cut a deal with Russo. Everybody understands that. You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. He needed something for River Road. You need a place to put veterans housing. So I get that. In some places it's called a bribe, but, okay. So why does it have to be put there, number one? It's one of the few places left in the city, backs up to a reservation. People use it. People walk the trails, and now you want to take it away and you want to put a veterans housing, hotel, whatever you want to call on it. I mean, there's a million reasons I could go through why it shouldn't happen. Maybe you should put it behind the rec center down below. That's vacant space. Been vacant for 15 years. There was a nice playground there, it's gone. Maybe you should put it there. Maybe you should put it on the village green. You wanted to put a fire department and a police department there at one time, maybe you should put it there. You sold the building on Cedar Street, you could have put it there. Bristol Myers Squibb has plenty of space. They got that nice green pasture in the front, put it there. And my question is, why Shumpike Road in a quiet neighborhood? And what really upsets me is, for 2 years, we debated the lights at Tatlock Field. And you all reached out to people and talked to them, and it went on for 2 years. The people that lived down at that end of town had to find out that this was happening on a document that this young lady here sent to a judge in Trenton. That's how they found out about this. And I'm sure, and they found out about this in January. And I'm sure this has been going on a lot longer than December 23rd. Nobody works in Trenton on December 23rd. But we sent it there hoping that nobody would find it, but we did. I mean, I get a notice in the mail when somebody wants to put a 10 by 10 deck behind my house or widen their driveway. And nobody in that end of town was made aware that we could be putting veteran housing on a lot, by the way, that was zoned for single-family houses and now mysteriously got zoned for multi-use purpose. So,
Thank you.
you don't have to answer my questions now, but
Thank-
I listened to everybody's campaign speeches, and we all talk about transparency and being honest, and this is not being transparent. Now, you may come forward and do it, but guess what? It's the cat's out of the bag. Not right.
Thank you.
Good evening, Council President and Council.
Good evening.
Andrew Miniger, 15 Edgar Street in Summit. The June 2025 Affordable Housing Plan from Summit offered one new affordable housing unit. And that new unit, that one unit, was of course way under what we were estimated to need. Other built-up municipalities offered 25%, and we offered one new unit. We hear the phrase Summit gambled and lost, and that is what that refers to, that June 2025 proposal that gambled. And we lost the opportunity to have built much, much less across our city, maybe even avoiding the entirety of the Shunpike project. My question to Ms. Holm is whether this gamble was based on your advice to last year's council, or if it was guided by last year's council majority. There are clues that hint at the answer to that question. First one being that, Ms. Holm, you represented other cities that did not gamble this way and lose. Those towns that proposed 25% of their calculated number instead of way under. But Summit went in a very different, risky direction and lost big time. The other clue is that earlier in your work with Summit, a couple years ago, you described the 50 units of affordable housing for Summit's Round 3 as a requirement. And then last year, your language and your opinion of that changed, and you no longer use that requirement language. And I believe the ideology of last year's council majority helped coax you into making that specific language change. So again, my question is, did you advise Summit to gamble in their June 2025 proposal, or did last year's council direct you to go that route? Thank you.
Hi, good evening. Delia Hamlet, 59 New England. I just wanted to say thank you to our professionals. I currently sit on the planning board, was a councilwoman before this. I want to submit for the record page 39 of our housing element and fair share plan from June. And I want to explain to the public that all of the sites need to meet 4 criteria. So whether we like it or not, sitting at home, if a site is approvable, available, developable, or suitable, we had an obligation to look at that land, whether we like it or not. And none of us want to overdevelop Summit. I ran and I was elected for that. But I want to submit this because this is really why, when we had to look at the judge, and when Ms. Holmes had to prepare our housing element and fair share plan and protect our city, that was her obligation and her duty, and I thank her. And I thank our planner, Tom Behrens. For the question, I'm not sure if this council knows, but those 2 parcels were acquired by Summit East Development. I believe it was in 2023, and I believe they're paying about $5,000 to $6,000 in taxes a year. What that means for all of you who live down there is that Summit East was not planning on keeping that a horse farm. They're one of the biggest developers. They also developed in the prod zone for Kenview, and the developer there, Russo, owns Wells Fargo. And when we looked at our 2 options, we could have either walked away from the table and everybody still would have had 198 units. But instead, what we did, which the residents should be happy for, is that we were allowed a relationship to produce $1 million to inject in the Summit Housing Authority and that property. With that property in this city's control, we will have more control over what is developed, and I guarantee you that there would have been able to have been at least 40 units. Tom, you've been doing this a lot longer than I have, but there was going to be something there. And we felt it was the right thing to do for the residents. Again, these are attorney-client privilege discussions. We simply couldn't tell you. I would have loved to. What I will tell you, that piece of property down there does not have a developer, does not need to have zoning in by March 15th, and we could do RFPs from now until a year from now and get the community engaged. And that's what you should do. Have a great night.
Anyone else?
Hello, Carol Peck-Tang, 231 Summit Ave. I have, I'm seeing a lot of this and like digesting it just now. First, just clarification question on the overlay over that building on DeForest Ave. That building has a lot of businesses inside that I can't imagine would want housing on top of that building. So I just don't understand what the rezoning would do to that building. I know JP Morgan is in that building. It's beautiful. It's like their primary client luxury offices. I don't imagine they would want housing there. And just looking at all the different buildings that are proposed, my biggest question is, at least on first look, it really seems like Washington School District will be severely affected by this. And we know that the Board of Ed budget last year had significant cuts to critical items that the community is very upset about being cut from the budget. So when we're already cutting things from the Board of Ed budget and from our school district and things that, like the PSATs and summer school, things that health services, that the teachers union found very critical and upsetting and disappointing that were cut last year, I don't really understand how we are supposed to absorb all these families moving in and significantly to certain districts over others within the town. And, my other question is, how then will the elementary lines be redrawn? Because I suspect for capacity's sake that that's going to be a significant issue. Also, based on what criteria will these lines be potentially withdrawn? And what is going to be the strategic plan for supporting the massive growth in the school budget of staff, support? We know health insurance costs are going up. And so all of these costs are something we're already struggling with as a town. And districts all around us are also struggling with and foreseeing quite large increases to just current operating budget. So I'm very concerned on these issues, again, from a point of, building up Speak Up Summit. And we have a lot of things that we are looking to advocate around, but man, does this really affect even the priorities we would be looking at to advocate around, because this seems like it's rapidly approaching, and it doesn't seem to me as though there is a strategic plan ahead of time to deal with these costs. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Peck-Tang. Anyone else?
Hi. First, I just want to point out that this statement by Ms. Hamlet, everyone should realize that she was.
Your name and address.
Sorry, Tracy Keegan. I first moved to Summit in 1994. Ms. Hamlet's statement, kind of trying to offer help and advice and everything. I think everybody needs to realize she was on council when this plan was made. She was intimately involved in the plan. She was now lost the election, was appointed to the planning board, and is now kind of the arsonist arriving in the fire truck. So I hope we all realize this. My question's for Ms. Holm. The December 23rd letter to the court seems to completely reverse Summit's position from June. Were the documents in June and December both driven by your guidance, or did council instruct you on what they wanted? I think this plan came as a shock to a lot of us, if not all of us were shocked by it, especially certain neighbors, like Shunpike neighbors. So between June and December, why did we have absolutely no public explanation about what was happening? We do know that other towns did reveal portions, if a part or not all of their plan to the public. You all had the opportunity to do so anytime between December 23rd and when you left office. When you guys all left office, you were, crowing about how great this plan was going to be. So I'm just wondering, why did we not hear anything? Between June and December, how many meetings, Ms. Holm, did you have with members of council regarding the Round 4 strategy? And I'd like to know if there were only Republicans present, or did you invite the Democratic minority members of the council? How many meetings did Summit have with Fair Share Housing, Russo, and Incline, and who attended those meetings on behalf of Summit? Aside from Summit, I know you represent a bunch of municipalities. How many other clients were forced to rewrite their affordable housing plan at the 11th hour because of severe challenges like ours? Why did you sign a letter last year that disparaged At Home and Summit, a volunteer group of residents who crafted a plan for affordable housing at the former firehouse site? I'm attaching that letter. Did you truly believe residents sharing their expertise in affordable housing planning is harmful? Or was the criticism of their proposal driven by council's wishes, the former council's wishes, or litigation strategy? Were you involved in drafting or advising on the testimony Summit elected Republicans gave in Trenton, including Ms. Hamlet, in early 2024, opposing the 2024 Fair Housing Act amendments? Did you warn them that being among the most vocal opponents statewide could increase our litigation risk? In hindsight, do you believe their testimony contributed to Summit being singled out for this challenge? And looking back, given the outcome now, what would you have recommended that Summit do differently? Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Diego Hoyk, 9 Argyle Court. On December 23rd, 2025, Summit made a settlement offer to Fair Share Housing and Russo. The content of our offer shows that their challenges had merit, so the plan we proposed last June did not conform to the law. Fair Share only challenged the immunity of 16 municipalities, including Summit. More than 430 municipalities were not challenged in their immunity. Arithmetically, Summit's plan was in the top 4% of bad plans. However, even if our affordable housing plan got an F- while we debated lights at Tatlock, blame games will only divide us. Right now, we need transparency. Here are my questions. First, on what date did Round 3 actually become final? On what specific dates did Summit file the documents it promised in the June consent order regarding projects at 2 houses of worship, construction schedules, development agreements, etc.? Number 2, what was the rationale for double counting units towards Round 3 and Round 4? How much credibility did we lose by adding overlay zones 1 through 7 and Elizabeth RCA to Round 4? Number 3, your firm represented many municipalities in these matters last year. How many did you represent? And how many of your clients saw their immunity challenged by Fair Share? Number 4, Fair Share accused Summit of self-servingly misinterpreting the requirement to address at least 25% of unmet need. How many of your clients used Summit's vacant land adjustment methodology to calculate RDP? If the majority of your clients took a different route, why was that? Number 5, how was the decision made to include 125 units from the Gallo building? This allowed Fair Share to attack Summit's credibility, since the statute states a municipality may not satisfy more than 30% of the affordable housing units through age-restricted housing. Number 6, how was the decision made to include Glenwood and Weaver, since they could not be included per statute because they were built in 1972 and 79? How much money does the city have to spend to make each building acceptable to Fair Share? Number 7, Fair Share references a memorandum on the city website that they accessed on August 18, 2025, but is no longer there. It cannot be privileged since they are the counterparty. When was it removed, on whose orders, and for what reason? Number 8, what impact did the timing of the sale of the firehouse lot have on the ability to settle these challenges, since the property features prominently in the fair share challenge? And finally, why can't the city place all filings in all relevant dockets on its website? They are public documents. Why should citizens have to go to e-courts
Thank
to
you,
get
Mr.
them?
Hoyt.
I will send you.
Is your name on it?
I will send it to Rosie.
Okay. Yeah.
John Calabrese, Yale Street. Questions regarding the presentation that was just shown. I'll reiterate what Mr. Carbone said earlier. You have the potential for 25 units down on the Shumpike area. But if you look at the gross size of the Bristol-Myers Squibb campus that's up for development, and then you tell us that you only have 20 units over there versus 25 on a postage stamp, seems like a little imbalance there. So I'm wondering what the thought process was there and if that could be amended. The overlay zone 6, I believe, was by the CBS. Didn't hear how many stories that was. I believe that would have been 4, most likely. And if it wasn't, what is it? In addition to that, there's a nice sized parking lot behind that. Given that area and the commonality of the density of the housing there, why can't we build underground parking, something like that, and additional housing there to alleviate some of these other areas? And then the statement was made about even distribution of low-income housing, and the map of Summit was shown, and there were colors on it. There were no colors in North or South Summit. It was all in a spine, Bristol-Myers, Central Business District, East Summit. So to say that it's evenly distributed, somebody needs to look at that again. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, well, my understanding is that there will be, we will have location on the city website for additional questions. I mean, as you process this and take the time to understand what all is in it, I'm sure you will have additional questions, and please keep submitting them. We'll answer them quickly. This didn't take as long as we had anticipated. Do we have questions from council?
Can we have our attorney answer the questions first? And if we have questions,
Do you want to take 5 minutes to confer and see if it makes sense, or?
I think I can answer a few of them pretty quickly.
Okay,
so
then
I'll just
terrific.
go ahead and
Thank you,
go for
Mr.
it.
Boyer.
Okay, the first question was, has the Shunpike property been purchased? It's owned by a partner in the Russo Development Company. And then the agreement is that they will donate the property to this, I'm sorry. The first question was, has the Shunpike property been purchased? That is owned by a partner of the Russo Development Company, and it will be donated to the city around when the Russo will come in for building permits, I believe. That's so it's not immediate. It's in the future. Does it have to be developed? It's in our plan, so it has to be developed. As far as a couple of people said something about the 25%, the interpretation of the 25%. I represent personally 20 municipalities across the state. I want to say 10 of them are vacant land municipalities who had the same interpretation of the 25%, and many of those plans were approved. So it really didn't have anything to do with the interpretation of the 25%. It was not a gamble. It was a well-thought-out plan. There were way more than one unit being constructed if you look at the unmet need and the RDP together. It's just our adjustment was rendered it smaller, and we did have we had excess credits because of the good work that Summit has done in the past. That is something that 100% of municipalities across the state, if they have excess credits, they apply it to the next round. There's nothing nefarious or terrible about doing so. That is part of this process. They are still affordable units, and they're still being filled with very low and moderate income households, which Summit should be applauded for having the foresight to do surplus credits, which you will see in the fourth round. We do have surplus credits going into round 5. There was no public explanation up to this point because we were still negotiating the mediation agreement between Fair Share Housing Center and the city. I know that many people in Trenton who voted for the amendments to this Fair Housing Act kept telling everyone how transparent this process was going to be, but everything shut down the second we entered mediation. Everything is confidential once you enter mediation. One thing I would like to remind everyone is that all of the challengers to the city's plan were known before the plan was adopted in June. We knew they were coming. We knew that we would have to deal with them. And Summit is actually very lucky, based upon my experience, and I'm sure with Tom's experience through this whole process. I had municipalities where a developer came in with a 350-unit project that they purchased the property on August 1st, gave no advanced warning to the municipality that they were coming in with a 350-unit project, and basically brought a builder's remedy in August, and that happened all over the state. So the city was prepared because they knew who they were dealing with well in advance of what was happening. I would like to remind everyone that my firm has represented the city of Summit for almost 2 decades, I want to say continuously, but I don't know if that's true. We have represented Democratic councils, Republican councils, and the like, and the one common denominator is that Fair Share Housing Center has been gunning for the city of Summit since time began. And it has always been an acrimonious relationship. I feel like we've made very big strides with them. We've had a very, very good discussion with them this entire time through the mediation process. And I feel like we are mending fences for the first time in 20 years with Fair Share Housing Center. So there is nothing that was gambled and lost. I only represent my municipalities to the best of my ability. They become my family members, and I take it very seriously how to protect all of my municipalities across the state. I'm just trying to find easy ones that I can answer, so forgive me. Round 3 ended on July 1st of 2025. All documents as part of the consent order were submitted to Fair Share Housing Center on the dates provided in the consent order. We did not double count anything. What you'll see from my explanation is that you continue to have an unmet need in round 3. That's a combined unmet need for the prior round and round 3. Like I said before, I represent 20 municipalities across the state. I did answer that 25% question. The Gallo building, it was very, very important to the city that we improve the Summit Housing Authority units. I am a firm believer in taking care of the low and moderate income residents that you currently have. I think those units are very much in need. And the best way to do that, to allow the Housing Authority to leverage state funding, is to include those units in an affordable housing plan. That is question number one on all state applications. Are you in a court-approved housing plan? So to set up the Housing Authority for success, the Housing Authority units were included in our June plan. I can't imagine anyone disagrees with improving the lives of Summit residents. The decision to include Glenwood and Weaver, yes, they are older than April 1st of 1980. Again, that was to help them leverage state funding for all the improvements that are needed in the Housing Authority. Those units will be deed restricted with a 40-year deed restriction once they are improved and the new affirmative marketing is done. And that is how they become creditworthy, and that was the decision that was made. It was to give the Housing Authority the best opportunity to improve those units. The memorandum on the website was removed. I don't know why it was on the website to begin with. It was written before the official amended Fair Housing Act was put into place. It was old advice based on what was happening at the time. The Fair Housing Act changed by the hour as it was going through Trenton. I think I wrote down, I believe certain Summit Council people did testify. I did not testify in Trenton, however, several of the partners in my firm did. There is about 100 years worth of experience in Mount Laurel in my firm, and they are the best people to advocate on behalf of municipalities against a law that has been a nightmare to navigate for every municipality across the state. I don't care what the people in Trenton said about what it was supposed to do. It did not function the way that it was supposed to. And it forced municipalities to operate in the dark, away from the public, and it shouldn't have happened that way. It was not some divine plan by me to keep it in the dark. I was protecting the city of Summit and participating in a mediation process that was confidential. The DeForest overlay zone on DeForest Ave on the building, that all the overlay zone does is if there is an opportunity where that building becomes vacant, no longer is able to rent space to businesses, they have the opportunity to convert it into residential. They don't have to. It's an option. I am not qualified to weigh in on school district decision-making, so I'll defer to those who are way more well-versed than I am. Let's see here. How many plans had to be rewritten? Based upon my discussions with professionals across the state, just about all of them did, for the reasons I said before. That developers came out of the woodwork with no advanced warning to municipalities, and they were under immense pressure to settle with those developers. It was a terrible process. So a lot of municipalities are forced to rewrite their plans in short order between now and March 15th. I do not believe that the city was singled out because of testimony in Trenton. Like I said, the relationship between Fair Share Housing Center and the city of Summit has been acrimonious for at least a decade, if not more. I feel like that has greatly improved this round. I would not have done anything different in Summit. I protected the city the best that I could with the best plan that I possibly could. Just because The city calculated its realistic development potential the way that it did not mean that Fair Share Housing Center was going to accept it as gospel. We used the most reasonable information that we had with the data that we had. That doesn't mean that would have been the outcome, nor do I think that the interpretation of the 25% made any impact on how we have arrived at this settlement agreement with Fair Share. One thing that the city needs to, or that citizens do need to understand is that many of the developments on our map, those are developers who purchase property, and we don't control where they purchase property and come in with proposed projects. It's whether it accords with sound planning, we consider it, and that's how the location of the affordable units occur. I think that's everything. Is there anything on your list?
There was the one question, the 20 units at the Bristol Myers.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Right, okay,
Yeah,
so.
that's just math.
Yes, yes. Okay, so as you can see on the map, do you have the map? Can you put it up? Bristol Myers Squibb is a huge campus, right? So, only a fraction of that campus is available for residential development, and we don't really know the extent, yes, okay, thanks. Or the location of what is not going to be deed restricted. So we are waiting for, Bristol Myers Squibb is entertaining several bids for the residential portion, I believe. Or the whole, is it the whole thing? Okay, so, but only some of it is, majority of it is going to be deed restricted for what is there now. That is due to environmental constraints. There is a certain amount of land that will not be deed restricted that they've determined is not impacted, that can be used for, that can be developed with residential. I don't know more than that. None of us do. Fair Share agreed that there's no point in demanding something more from the city when we don't have enough information. So we agreed to, as you can see, at least 20 affordable housing units. That doesn't mean only, it's just at least. We don't know until we know who the developer is that comes in, and at that point, we will have to work on what that residential development will look like. So that we're doing the best we can with the information that we have on that one, so. Did I miss any other questions?
Okay. Okay.
Did you close public comments?
Well, for you, Reverend, we'll reopen them.
I just had a question.
Yeah.
Thank you, Council President, and to Mayor and to the council. I have a question for Ms. Holm. I'm trying to understand, because some of you go to church or synagogue or whatever, we sing a song, "We're climbing Jacob's ladder," and then there's a verse that says, "Every round goes higher and higher." So I want to just know if this is round 4, round 5, round four. Is there a time when the rounds stop? My question is, so next year it'll be round 6. It's infinitum, it just continues round, round, round?
There are 10-unit rounds, or 10-year rounds, I'm sorry. It's been a long day. 10 years, 10-year housing cycles, and they are based upon the census.
So there's no time period in a municipality when it is fully developed in terms of a round needing to be addressed?
Right, so every 10 years, what would happen is the city would evaluate changed circumstances such as Bristol Myers Squibb, if something like that would occur. And then they would calculate their realistic development potential again and use whatever credits they have, whatever developments that come through the door from developers to create another affordable housing.
So that would be, in other words, the rounds continue. So Kayla, 6 years from now, she'll be out of college. She'll come back to this. It'll be round 12 or something like that.
Yes, it's every 10 years.
Okay. Okay. Should we move on to council questions? Oh.
Peter Sabello, 11 Greenfield Avenue. It's not clear to me, on the Bristol Myers Squibb property, what portion of that, or has it been defined yet on what portion is going to be available for the housing? I mean, that's a big piece of property, I know that.
We're not sure yet. They haven't told us.
Okay.
Okay. That it? Okay. Council questions. We keep trying. Mr. Pulowski.
Is it just questions, or can we make a statement too?
At this point, the idea is we're gathering questions, sir.
Okay, so I have a few. Just to follow up on the whole 25% question. You said that we were not the only municipality who calculated our obligation the way that we did. So is there consensus among the program judges and adjudicators as to how the calculation should occur?
No.
So some of the professionals that Trenton appointed to oversee this process actually agree with us.
Yes, there are several special adjudicators and some judges that agree with our interpretation.
Okay, and when you go into a law library and you see all those books, right, there's a winner and a loser for every decision, right?
Yes.
That doesn't mean it's a ludicrous position or anything like that.
That's correct.
Okay. And you also said that there are some municipalities who calculated as we did and had their plans approved.
Yes.
As to the question of whether the rounds would ever stop, certainly they could pause for a particular municipality if that municipality has already satisfied their unmet need, depending on whether the rules are changed in the following round, right?
It wouldn't necessarily be paused. So I have several vacant land municipalities who continue to have an RDP of 0 because they continue to have no land to build anything, and the unmet need just gets bigger. And every round, you have to reevaluate your overlay zones and all of the mechanisms that you've put in place to make sure they're still reasonable. So there would still be, no matter what, a fight with, and I say that lightly, a discussion, a strongly worded discussion with Fair Share Housing Center on whether what you have in place is reasonable. And that, for me, this experience, it ran the gamut, where they asked for huge increases in density in some towns, and some towns they kept the same as round 3. It just all depended on the municipality, because every municipality is different.
And why does Fair Share Housing have so much power over what any municipality chooses to do in terms of development?
They are the de facto nonprofit entity that looks out for low and moderate income households. And the Supreme Court in Mount Laurel 4 defined them as such. So they are awarded a lot of deference because of the community that they represent.
And if the state legislature so chose to modify the legislation, could it ease the burden on municipalities?
Yes. The Supreme Court, in all of the Mount Laurel decisions, defers to the legislature on how the Fair Housing Act should operate.
So think hard about who you vote for. That's it.
Other council questions?
Council President.
Yes, Mr. Boyer.
Go ahead.
So how are these areas chosen? Like how do we even get developers to come in, and how does that process work?
Typically, the developer gets an option on a property and approaches the city with a project.
So the city's not going out and looking for land to develop on because we're not developers, right? They come to us, and that's how this whole thing starts. So the area at Shunpike, once this is signed, the city will own that land, right?
The settlement agreement?
Yeah.
No, it's going to be transferred, I believe, upon 190 River Road applying for building permits, or
Got it.
around that time.
So at some point, though, they're going to transfer the land to Summit, right?
Yes.
So Summit will be the owner of that land, right?
Yes.
Okay. So can you explain the difference that if the developers still own that land, what the city could say about what they put there, right? So if Russo still owned the property at Shunpike, they could build an apartment building, right? They could build pretty much, if it's in zoning, right? They could build.
Well, we have immunity from builder's remedy lawsuits, so they couldn't come in with something that's excessively, dense at this point in time. That doesn't mean that in round 5, they would use that property to leverage the city in some way when we do our next plan. If they had kept that property, it wasn't part of our settlement, they could have gone to the zoning board for whatever application they would like.
And so now that the city will one day own the property, the city can decide what goes there, right? So, for example, right now it's a veterans home. Maybe 2 years from now, the city may decide that we want to put a group home there for disabled children, right? Like, as long as you get the 23 units, right? Is that
25, but yes.
25, right?
Yes. It is, because they're supportive units, it would have to be adults, because the Mount Laurel Doctrine, it doesn't deal with group homes for children, it deals with adults.
No, that's fine.
But,
I mean,
but
I
yeah,
don't
so
wanna-
it would have to be, but you would have to at least, we're getting 50 credits out of those 25 units. So if you built less, or if you built something that didn't amount to 50 credits, and we had we had a disparity in how our credits were lining up, then we would have to find another parcel to.
We would have to find another parcel, right?
Correct.
Like, for example, Bristol Myers Squibb, right? That's 20 units, and we have an excess of 23.
Yes.
Right? Okay. All right. So it's better that the city actually owns that property because we have more flexibility of what we can do, right?
Yes.
In Shunpike, okay.
As of right now, we are required to build 25 veteran supportive housing
Understood.
units.
Understood. The other thing is Glenwood, Weaver Street, Vita Gallo. Look, you don't have to fall on the sword for that one, right? I will certainly take that, and I'll tell anybody that every meeting that we had, I brought it up, right? Like that's what needed to happen. I grew up in this town. I'm familiar with the apartments. Like I've been in them recently, not like seen a picture or anything. Like I actually know people who live there, and I go there. So $1 million, right, to help renovate 195 units, and the other structure of the deal where the city will provide legal and counsel to try to get more funds to submit applications, like the whole process of it, right? I don't think that would have happened without this process, fixing these units. I think that was one of the biggest wins of this whole plan, was renovating 195 affordable housing units, low income, that we have currently in Summit right now that are falling apart, right? This is an amazing thing that we did. The last thing is, Westville. Westville did a similar type of deal where they got something from a developer to help offset some costs for affordable housing, right? So
I think so.
yeah.
I don't know.
So the idea that this was a gamble, because even the adjudicator said that Summit was fair and did everything. The plan was good. They signed off on it, right? So it wasn't a gamble. And the other idea that there's some nefarious type of deal with getting money from Russo is absurd, right? Like we're really not a part of that whole thing, right? I think the great thing is for a municipality to negotiate and actually get something for a developer who's going to develop there anyway is a win-win. Can you explain, I know you said builder's remedy, right? But I think the public is maybe, and I was confused about it at first too, right? So you have an arbitrator, you have developers that come to the arbitrator and say, we want to develop there, right? And then Summit has to say, you can't develop there for a reason. And then they go back to the arbitrator and it's back and forth or whatever. But we can't use our immunity to say no, right? They own that property. So if you could just talk about that sequence of the city's attorney, the arbitrator, fair share, like how did that whole circle work?
I'll do my best. So just for those who don't know what a builder's remedy is, that was created in Mount Laurel 2. That was in about 1985, I believe, 83. Forgive me. There's a lot going on. Mount Laurel 2, because the legislature had not acted since 1975 when the first Mount Laurel decision was created, the Supreme Court of New Jersey took it upon themselves and created the builder's remedy. And what that is if a municipality does not comply and create a realistic opportunity for its fair share of affordable housing in the region, a builder can come in and satisfy that obligation by presenting a project they are ready, willing, and able to develop. Usually 9.9 times out of 10, that project that they propose is astronomical. It's very dense, knowing that they're going to get whittled down to a number. What also is involved in a builder's remedy is that if a municipality, it's very rare, but if a municipality absolutely refuses to proceed in good faith, there is a remedy where the court can take over your planning board. And the court master, which is now called a special adjudicator, decides what projects are approved and which are not. That occurred in Inglewood Cliffs is the best example of that. That's the that's the shining example of what can happen and what the Supreme Court has allowed courts to do with what they call recalcitrant municipalities. So that's the background of what a builder's remedy is and what the severe consequences are for a municipality. So what happened was, in order to maintain your immunity from builder's remedy lawsuits, the amended Fair Housing Act says you have to meet all of these deadlines. So the first deadline was by the end of January last year, where you had to accept your number or calculate a new number, and then say you were going to abide by this. This is your round 4 number, right? So we did that last year in January. The next deadline is you have to adopt a plan by June 30th, which was the end of round 3. Round 3, the last day of round 3 was June 30th of 2025, and July 1st started round 4. So your plan had to be in by that deadline. And some municipalities did not do it, and their immunity was stripped and their case was dismissed. Summit, we were fine. We got it all done. Then challengers had to review the municipality's plan and file challenges by August 31st of 2025. That includes Fair Share Housing Center, any developers, any nonprofits. I did have some other nonprofits in certain municipalities that are local that did. We had neighbors, all sorts of challenges were filed. Unfortunately, the Fair Housing Act says a developer cannot challenge your plan and say that my project is better. Unfortunately, the practical effect was the program didn't dismiss those developers, and they got to participate fully in the process. And a majority of the time, I was told, settle with that developer, or we can't recommend your plan. So that's where we were. And like I said, I had other municipalities where I had 350 unit projects that had to go in my plan that I didn't know about until August 1st. Or no, I didn't even know about till August 31st, and they purchased the property on August 1st. So this did not go the way that I think anyone envisioned it would go, unless the developers, they envisioned it, and this is how it worked. So then from August 31st through the end of the year was the time frame in the Fair Housing Act where all the municipalities across the state had to negotiate and settle with any of the challengers if you received any. I had some towns that did not receive any challenges, so which did include the 25% interpretation that I had, and I had no challengers, including Fair Share Housing Center. Just want to add that. So that we have been in mediation this whole time, and mediation is confidential, and that's why we are where we are. Summit has a complicated set of facts, and we had several developers. We had one that we couldn't reach an agreement with, but we had to we agreed with Fair Share Housing Center on how to satisfy our round 4 plan. We received a lot of additional things, particularly from Russo, which helped with the settlement. We received 1.8 acres. It's not easy to come by 1.8 acres of land in Summit and on which to build affordable units. We have $1 million that's going to go toward the Housing Authority, which is much needed. We have improvements to the golf course that's across the street, because that will de facto become an amenity for that development. And in order to alleviate the congestion created by this project downtown, which is already congested, I don't have to tell anyone in this room that, Russo is operating shuttle service so that those cars from that project are not going to need parking downtown. He actually, because this is a common request across the state, because parking is difficult, particularly in northern New Jersey where he develops, usually, he actually owns a shuttle service, because this is such a often complained about issue for most municipalities. So he is operating that shuttle service for his developments, and that was something that greatly affected the settlement in this case. So I hope that helped. Did I answer your question? I don't know if I did.
Yeah, it's okay. It's a whole complicated thing.
Yeah.
You know, it's all good. And the last thing is, what would have happened if we would have disclosed all of the projects that we were doing during this time frame, right? I mean, you just named like 3 different particular periods of the process, and the New Jersey legislature wrote this out, right, so that we couldn't talk to the public. But what would have happened if we did? What were the consequences of that?
It could have compromised either of our settlements. It also could have created an ethical issue for me personally by divulging confidential settlement communications. Usually if you've ever been involved in a lawsuit, you'll see confidential settlement communication written at the top so that it's not used It's not a public document. It can't be used as evidence. That is a big issue. And until we knew exactly what was going to be in that settlement agreement, things came in and fell out, and it evolved just about on a daily basis. So there wasn't anything to say until I was required on December 23rd before we had an inked deal with Fair Share Housing Center that was completely finalized. I had to write the brief because I was required by Judge Miller to do so.
Ms. Landman.
Thank you. Hi. I have a couple just clarifying questions first. So for Franklin Place, and Augusto gave me some information about this before, but I think it'd be helpful for the public to have.
Sure.
So when we talk about that development, what's the total number of units, not just affordable, that we're going to plan for that site? Who owns those properties today? When is this development likely to occur? And what are the major gating issues to that proceeding?
Yeah, I'll try to give my understanding of that area and how that evolved and what is going to take place. So, my understanding is that the total number of units that can be produced through new townhouse zoning would be 70. So 20% of that would produce 14 affordable units, I believe is the math. I don't have it in front of me. I believe the total acreage is approximately 7 total acres, and it encompasses in that block lots 7 through 20. So there's, give or take, I don't know, what is that, 13 parcels or so of varying sizes. Our firm's been involved with Summit for a while in various capacities as city planner, planning board planner, zoning board planner, worked on the DRO, and so we've been deeply involved in zoning and development in Summit since I've been at the firm and even prior to my tenure. And this was a site, or this area of Summit, Franklin Place, has been identified as a place, sort of a low-hanging fruit, so to speak, that was ripe for redevelopment. In part because of its proximity to the train station, to the downtown. Obviously, the area we're talking about is about a half a block to a block just from those areas. So a very walkable part of Summit. And on the westerly side of that block, Franklin Place, where it intersects Summit Avenue, are 2 or 3 new townhouse developments. So the idea of the vision was to continue that development, and those properties are currently in the multifamily / transit-oriented development zone, which in theory we could have continued down this stretch of Franklin Place, but we wanted to be a little more targeted, a little more sensitive to the existing property owners that are to the north, which are single-family and multifamily on the north side of Franklin Place. And one of the other thoughts is that what exists between lots 7 and 20 is really a hodgepodge of uses. You have dwellings that include a number of apartments, essentially 2, 3 family buildings. You have commercial uses, industrial uses, and just an area that's evolved in a piecemeal fashion. Over time, there have been a few applications to the, I believe, zoning board for multi-unit projects. There's vacant land there. So again, when we had to think about places where we could produce affordable housing, right, that's the state mandate. That's what we were charged to do. This seemed like a reasonable place to do that. And the program that we thought would be reasonable for that area is townhouse development at 10 units per acre.
Right, but who owns those properties today, and when are we planning this development in the timeline?
There are multiple owners of those individual parcels, and again, they're varying in size, varying in use. And so the mandate is to create the opportunity through zoning, to create the incentive that somebody can take advantage of that and produce affordable housing. So we don't have, the city, no municipality has to go out and pick a developer, has to draw the plans or anything like that. The mandate is that you create the opportunity, and that's what the zoning is intended to do.
Okay, so 70 townhomes on Franklin Place from, it's like Hobart, I believe, over to
the corner, essentially.
Yeah, okay. And it's only if a developer wants to do it. Okay. On the Summit Housing Authority, just to follow up on Councilman Boyer's questions. So we understand there's $1 million for renovations. My questions are more about, like, are there any contingencies with either Fair Share Housing, Summit Housing Authority, or otherwise about how those dollars are spent? Are there additional dollars we need to raise to meet some agreement?
Yes, so, and just for timing for Franklin Place, we have to institute the rezoning by March 15th. By July 1st of 2028, the city will present written commitment to develop the property from a developer in accordance with the zoning, or the city will replace the 14 affordable units with another project. So again, if Bristol Myers Squibb develops with more units, that might be a way that we replace those units if it doesn't come to fruition. So that, I just wanted to answer your question on the timing on that one. The Housing Authority, there is a 1 million, according to the term sheet that we executed with the Housing Authority, and we will have a more formal agreement before the council at the March 3rd meeting. There is a $1 million payment, lump sum payment, that will be used to start, is it Glenwood that we have the? Glenwood that we have the, yes, Glenwood, they have already done the analysis for what the costs are, so that they can get started with the improvements to Glenwood.
And what is that? Sorry, what does that cost?
It's about $175 a unit, $1,000 a unit, $175,000. But that there's also, they're going to evaluate the other properties to do the same analysis that they did with Glenwood. And then the city is going to provide $180,000 per year to the Housing Authority for specific projects as we go. So through the round. And then by including them in the municipal housing plan, they can then go and leverage funds through the state when they're available to improve those properties. So that's the plan as far as expending money goes.
Okay. And then at our last council meeting, there were some who suggested we completely reject the plan, vote no on the ordinances, et cetera. So you mentioned before that we must do this or we lose our immunity. Can you just elaborate or comment a little bit further on the consequences of that suggestion?
Yes. So the amended Fair Housing Act says, like I said, as long as the municipality continues to operate in good faith through this process, it will maintain its immunity. So at this point, operating in good faith is implementing what the city has agreed to. And specifically, there are the ordinances and adopting the amended plan are the requirements entering into several agreements, like with Housing Authority and an amended agreement with our house and a few developers agreements like that. Those have to be done and submitted to the program by March 15th. There are other deadlines within the agreement that we're still, until right before this meeting, we were still negotiating with Fair Share Housing Center, and I'm still waiting for their final revisions. There will be deadlines throughout that we have to meet, either construction deadlines or approval deadlines, or in the case of the Veterans Project, we have within a certain, I believe it's within 60 or 90 days of the transfer of the property, we have to we have to enter into a developer's agreement with whoever is going to develop that project. So within 90 days of the transfer of that parcel. And then 60 days after that, we have to amend the zoning so that it can be brought as of right to the planning board. So there are various things. So all of those deadlines demonstrate that the city is operating in good faith. So if the city is not found to be operating in good faith, whether it fails to adopt all of the ordinances on time and submit them by March 15th, the vicinage judge can remove our immunity.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I get this
Yes.
right.
That was a long-winded answer. I'm
Council
sorry.
has to approve ordinances next month.
Yes.
that relate to 190 River Road, Harmon Holdings, Little Kings.
No.
Our House, Little Kings is done.
Yeah, Little Kings is
Fine.
before the planning board.
Fine.
Yeah.
Our House,
No.
okay, so when is the Our House and Summit Housing Authority, any ordinances related to that? There's no time frame.
There's no ordinances related to those.
Okay.
Those are agreements.
And then can you repeat what you just said? Because I think it's different than what you said to Councilman Boyer about the veterans housing at Shunpike. We have 60 days to do what after we get
Okay,
that property?
yeah, let me get the exact. Let me just find it. So I'm saying there.
Because there are residents from that neighborhood here tonight, and I just want to make sure
Okay.
they.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Russo will donate property known as 47 and 53 Shunpike to the city for a municipally sponsored 100% affordable veterans supportive housing project. The agreement between the city will require the property be transferred to the city in accordance with the terms of the mediation agreement with Russo. And Russo has agreed that it shall deed Shunpike to the city with clean title upon obtaining final unappealable site plan approval from the planning board. I'm sorry, I did say building permits before, but it's as soon as they have unappealable approvals from the planning board for their project. Within 90 days of receipt of the recorded documentation transferring Shunpike to the city will enter into an agreement with the developer of the Veterans Project and provide an executed copy of the agreement to Fair Share. It will include a pro forma of construction costs and a plan for those construction costs. Within 60 days of the execution of the agreement, the city shall rezone the property to ensure that the developer can proceed as of right with a site plan application to the planning board. So those are the deadlines for that one.
So we have a very short window, if at all, to change. I'm confused, because you just said we didn't have to put it there.
And I didn't say we had to put it there. I
Okay.
said we have to develop that property with supportive housing.
Okay.
Yes.
But it doesn't have to be the veterans housing.
It doesn't, but that was the intention. It's support, we have to develop it with supportive housing because
I
there's 50
understand that, but
credits.
I just want to clarify whether or not it's required that we put veterans housing there.
It's not, but that was the intention behind it, so.
Okay. I think those are my questions.
Council President.
I don't know if you should.
I'm so sorry, yes.
Yes, Council
Council
President. Maybe just to follow up to that.
Sure.
If one disagrees with the Shunpike project siting and use, is there an opportunity to move it somewhere else in the city to a different location, a quote, better location? Is that something that we have the power to do?
Not really, no. This was the agreement that we entered into, and we would have to amend our plan and go through this process again. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, please.
What does that mean, to amend the plan?
I'm sorry, what am I, what?
When you say
Yeah.
we'd have to go through amending the plan, what does that look like?
Well, we have an agreement with Fair Share Housing Center. We have a recommendation for an approval for this project. So,
No.
this is,
Let- One person at a time, and at this point, it's Ms. Holm.
I don't recommend doing any of that. We'll just put it that way. I don't think that's a good idea at all, so.
Okay.
Please don't shout from the audience.
Council President, I had additional questions, but
Keep going.
that's different from my understanding and what I was hearing before as well. So I understand if people are confused. I didn't understand. But we're all digesting this information, which is very new for all of us. Going back to your question about other towns, why were other towns around us, like Westfield, which it's not Summit, but it is a wealthier town, how were they able to have a more open and transparent process? And what did they do differently that allowed them to have more visibility and more openness with their community members?
I'm not familiar with Westfield, so.
I don't know all of the details, but I know one of the attorneys that was involved. And my general understanding is that they were able to resolve the various disputes from the developers interested in certain projects, which were, my understanding is, smaller in scale and a bit more palatable for the community. So they were able to approve those amicably prior to the challenge process. So they essentially went into the challenge period basically hand in hand with Fair Share Housing Center with a plan that worked for everybody at that point. Summit, we obviously had a few challengers. We're going into the challenge period. We knew we would be facing those challenges, and at that point had not reached agreements as far as what the city might deem to be, acceptable scale of development.
Okay. A question I think perhaps best suited for you, Tom. I'm wondering whether the projects within the affordable housing agreement are compliant with Summit's current master plan, especially the 190 River Road project, which to me looks to be outside the master plan's parameters. And if you have any information overall, and particularly on that project.
It's a loaded question. I'll do the best I can. So on the one hand, the document that the planning board is going to, well, the document that the planning board adopted in June of 2025 is the Housing Element and Fair Share Plan, which is an element of the master plan. That's going to be amended this month, February 23rd, by the planning board, which will include 190 River Road as a plan mechanism. I think it would be helpful to go back to how that site evolved, as a component of this plan mechanism, how the developer, came to own the property, et cetera. So my recollection is that Wells Fargo had occupied this existing three-story office building up until about 12 or 18 months ago. The site was put up for auction, and the winning purchaser was Onyx Equities, who is a partner with Russo Development. And so they were the team that at first came to the city exploring medical office, and that evolved through this fourth round affordable housing process, which created the opportunity for developers to propose projects like this to towns, to come to the city with a 250-unit project. That development at that time was perceived to be too intense, and so there were initial preliminary discussions, as all towns were engaged in, to see if that development could be reduced in scale in any manner. And so there were several iterations from there. Ultimately, when the planning board adopted the plan in June, the project had not made its way into the plan at that time. It had not been reduced in scale enough that the city deemed it acceptable. There were a few public meetings, at least one where Russo's proposal at the time was vetted by the public. I think that was at the planning board. And the public was able to give feedback. And based on the feedback, the project was not placed in the plan. So your question pertains to, whether or not the proposal that is included in the city's agreement is, we'll call it, consistent with the master plan. So on the one hand, the process that the state created basically says, was designed to circumvent zoning, was designed to circumvent certain master plan provisions that municipalities have that, basically establish the character of the municipality. So I think there's a few ways to look at this. One is that you had an existing three-story office building that was atop of 2 levels of structured parking. And it was the developer's intent to remove the office building, keep the structured parking, and build on top of that. And so one of the key points of the mediation, as expressed by the court adjudicator as well as the program judge, was, hey, you have this developed site. It's got 700 parking spaces. This developer has a fairly legitimate case as to why this should be developed with some number of affordable units, and then we worked on what those number of units should be. Furthermore, just under the site is, I don't know if it's a tributary to the Passaic River or some water body, that the site could not be demolished and redeveloped into something new. So people had asked, why not just knock it down, build a nice townhouse development, build something else? The fact was that because of modern environmental regulations, you couldn't do that. You couldn't just bulldoze it and do something that would be more in keeping, with the character of Summit. So I would say that the current iteration of the project, as shown in the settlement agreement, the 198 units, was just part of the mediation process. And again, it was guided by the adjudicator's comments, by the program judge's comments, and it was also an opportunity for the city to locate significant, well, I'll say some amount of density in an area of the city that might be less impactful than other sites and other developments. For instance, an 8-story, 300-unit project right in the middle of downtown on the Village Green. So again, when one had to make choices of, you had to do something, right? Doing nothing was not an option, because if you did nothing, you would lose your immunity, lose control of local zoning entirely. So we had to do something, and, choosing from the different options we had to work with, that became a site that not only the program told us we had to work with, but again, once we understood that, we said, okay, how can we, make this something that fits with Summit and that we can maximize the opportunity to maximize affordable housing credits and get other community benefits, like, as discussed, $1 million, the Shunpike site, et cetera. So as proposed, it may not perfectly align with the master plan, but again, I think this site evolved through rounds of mediation, certainly a few heated conversations, between the city and developer to get where we were. And again, remember, they started at 254. The final product is 198. And when you consider the Russo project and the Shunpike projects as a whole package, which it is, that represents a total of 223 physical units, whereby the city is going to get 95 affordable housing credits. So the ratio essentially is that the city will get 46.6% affordable housing set aside out of this 223 unit project. So from that perspective, it was a tremendous deal that alleviates development pressure elsewhere in Summit, and that was part of the decision making.
Thanks for that, and we'll be exploring that. I'm the liaison to the planning board, so we'll be diving into that, I'm sure. But just on that project, it seems that it's a traffic island. It has two divided highways and an access road surrounding it. And to think of kids growing up there, it's not a place where I would want my kids to grow up. But that's maybe a little too editorial for a council president. Another question, was the financial impact on our property taxes, our city budget, schools, and contribution to the county taken into consideration in the negotiation of the plan and the weighting of the different elements of the plan? And related to that is there an unfunded liability to rehab Summit Housing Authority units? We heard the $1 million, that's about $5,000 per unit, and we've heard the rehab cost is closer to $200,000 per unit. Is there an uncovered cost there that will be absorbed by the city?
So I would have to defer to the CFO as far as the tax liability, and the schools would have to go to those who those who know better than I do about those things. The Housing Authority agreement requires that the Housing Authority exercise good faith in obtaining all possible funding applications that they possibly can over the next 10 years. And in year 8, if for some reason none of it gets funded, the city would have to bond for it. I find that extremely unlikely, given that housing authorities have been funded by the state for similar projects in the past. So what the agreement also says is that the city's trust fund will also assist in helping them hire a consultant who is experienced in leveraging those funds. So.
That's great. Thanks for that information. So the impact on our taxes was not considered as part of the negotiation process or our own strategy.
I mean, all of those arguments are always made. If you go back and look at the Mount Laurel decisions, the Supreme Court and judges continually say that doesn't matter because that's what Mount Laurel did with its exclusionary zoning, was for the purpose of excluding school-age children and keeping the property taxes low. So that's not a viable, and I'm not saying it's an excuse. I think it's perfectly legitimate, and I think that that's silly not to take those things into consideration, but they are not taken into consideration because of the Mount Laurel 1 decision. So
by the judge.
By the judge.
Right.
So
But for our own
we
planning
can.
purposes.
I know that I'm sure that Russo will show traffic studies and school-age children studies and all of those things when they go to the planning board. There are more public hearings to be had throughout this whole process. So I believe that they will submit all of those things to the planning board when they come for applications.
Thanks, you've been very patient. One last question. What is the total number of units expected to be constructed or potentially constructed with all of the mechanisms? And what would be the total number of new residents or occupants of those units?
Give me 1 second.
Council President, while Ms. Holm is looking for that answer, can I just elaborate on the question that
Please
Councilman
do, City
Christofouli had?
Administrator Baldwin.
With regard to tax implications, I can't speak to the school, again, their budget and what they need to do and how many school-age children might come in. Russo Developments will give a presentation on that to the planning board on what they think it might be. But for the city, obviously, that would be a rateable, and we don't have a pilot. There's no pilot being considered for this, so that's where the county comes in and they get an extra 5% if we're giving a pilot. So there's no tax break given to this developer for this project.
If you prefer to answer that offline, that's fine. I don't
Yes,
expect
I'll
you
get
to-
that answer to you. I'm sorry. We'll
Okay.
put that in the frequently
That's
asked
fine.
questions.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry,
No
I just didn't
worries.
have that calculated. I apologize.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, if I may, very briefly.
Yes,
My,
Ms. Lucero,
my
see.
back of the envelope math, it's about 430. But we'll confirm. total new
Units.
If everything were to come to pass, including building at Bristol Myers Squibb, et cetera, so both the projects and the overlay changes were to come to fruition over the 10-year period, it's, I believe, over 430 total new units.
And you could assume as an average number of residents for those units and come to some number, I assume.
Yes, and that's assuming that the overlay zones all get developed in 10 years. So they've been in place for at least 12 now, right? Overlays since 2018? Yeah, so they've been in place since 2018, and only 2 of them have developed. And one of them was a 100% affordable habitat project, and the other one did not develop with the overlay zoning. It was only 6 units. So that's assuming if all of the overlay zones, which have not developed yet, are developed. So.
Did you have a question, Ms. Kalmanson?
Thank you, Council President. All of my questions really have been answered so far, but I did want to clarify something. When we're comparing the 20 affordable units at Bristol Myers Squibb and the 25 affordable units at Shunpike, the Bristol Myers Squibb site is inclusionary housing. Is that
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So what would that be more like a total?
That would be a minimum of 100 units, with 20 of them being affordable.
Okay, so the Bristol Myers Squibb site is getting 100 units, not 20, like total.
Minimum, yes.
Okay, sorry, thank you. I
Yes.
just thought there was some confusion there.
Yes. Yes, and the 25, the Shunpike would only be the affordable supportive units,
Mhm.
veteran supportive units.
Okay, thank you. Do we have other council questions? Yes, Ms. Luceracina.
Thank you, Council President, and I apologize for jumping in earlier. I don't want to dwell too far on what happened in the past, but I do think it's important for us to understand how we got here so that we don't repeat missteps of those who have gone before us. So I want to refocus briefly on this issue of the 25%. So there was, as part of the most recent amendments to the affordable housing law, this 25% multiplier as a mechanism by which towns could try to reduce the number of affordable housing units that they would have to build over the 10-year period. So on this question of whether our interpretation of the 25% rule contributed to Fair Share bringing their challenge against us, I pulled up Fair Share's challenge, and it says, in part, quote, "The city self-servingly misinterprets the requirement to address at least 25% of unmet need through redevelopment and fails to meet the requirement." So this was the prior council's decision to apply the 25% multiplier to the much lower RDP, the realistic development potential of 18, I believe, rather than the much higher unmet need number of 327. So this was a choice that we made of how to apply the 25% multiplier, and based on what I'm reading in the Fair Share Challenge, it does indeed seem to have contributed to the challenge that was brought against the city, but appreciate your thoughts if you take a different view.
Sure, yes, of course, they, just like anyone bringing claims against someone, you have to bring all of them or you waive them. I'm going to read the language specifically from the statute. Any municipality that receives an adjustment of its prospective need obligations for the fourth round or subsequent rounds based on a lack of vacant land shall, as part of the process adopting and implementing its housing element fair share plan, identify sufficient parcels likely to redevelop during the current round of obligations to address at least 25% of the prospective need obligation that has been adjusted, and adopt realistic zoning that allows for such adjusted obligation, or demonstrate why the municipality is unable to do so. The language that is important is to address at least 25% of the prospective need obligation that has been adjusted. That has been adjusted is the realistic development potential. That is the strict construction of that. My law firm represents 100 municipalities across the state, from Cumberland County up to Bergen and Passaic, and we use that interpretation all across the state. Like I said, I have settled cases where using the interpretation in Summit's housing element and fair share plan. Just because Fair Share argued it doesn't mean that they're right. We have no adjudication on what the statutory construction means. Several municipalities tried to file motions to have the vicinage judge review that language before we went into mediation, and they were all rejected. So it's basically left up to appeal to go through the system after plans have all been adopted and can appeal certain decisions. So no definitive ruling has been made on any of those. And there are varying interpretations of that. There's at least 4 separate interpretations that people have used across the state on the 25%. So just because Fair Share says it is what that is, doesn't make it so.
Thank you. Just one additional question. Based on the timeline that you set out during the presentation, we received our prospective need number from DCA, the number of new affordable housing units that were estimated to be needed over the 10-year period of 345 new affordable housing units, right? So that, to me, kind of set the ceiling of the number of new units that we would be obligated to provide over the 10-year period. As a result of the June 2025 plan, the reflection of the application of the vacant land analysis, that number then came down to 18 as the RD, the realistic development potential, kind of looking at what land is available and developable. So we went from the ceiling of 345 and then came down to 18. But then based on what was approved by the prior council in December of 2025, it appears we then came back up to 345, and acknowledging that these are not all new units to be constructed, right? A large chunk of them are for the rehabilitation of the Summit housing units, but we went from the ceiling of 345 down to 18, and now we're back at the ceiling of 345. So I guess my question is that I can't make that make sense really as to how we started and have ended up back at the ceiling.
Sure. So the 345 is our prospective need obligation, and just because we had adjusted our number down using the vacant land analysis doesn't mean that the entire 345 goes away. It gets divided into the realistic development potential, which was the 18, and then you still have to provide mechanisms as the city develops and redevelops to try to satisfy that unmet need. That's where the overlay zones come into play for the prior round and the round 3 vacant land analysis, and then the same is true for this round. And I don't know if it was as articulately stated as it should have been when I went through this, but what you'll see is if you go and look at the June plan, a significant majority of the mechanisms that are in the current settlement agreement were also applied to the unmet need. So you can go back and see the housing authority units are there. The hold on one second. So what was included in the unmet need last round, Harmon Holdings units, Glenwood Place, Weaver Street, Vito Gallo, NBC overlay zone, our house, Brandywine, and then what we did was we combined the unmet need, all of the mechanisms with the unmet need for prior round and round 3 and round 4 to make a combined unmet need. I don't know if recall what I answered a question before. For towns that have an RDP of 0, they would just, and let's say they had a 20-unit obligation, right, and they continue to have an RDP of 0, that 20 would just get added on to their unmet need that they already had, if that makes sense. I hope I'm making sense. So what you'll see is all of the ones that I listed are still in the round 4 plan. We've got our house, Brandywine, Harmon Holdings, NBC Zone, Weaver Street, Glenwood, Vito Gallo, and the vacant and abandoned properties. So, and then we added the 5 new mechanisms. Based on the number of credits we had, based on the fact that we could utilize up to 87 bonus credits toward our round 4 obligation, it made more sense, particularly because we could not settle with Incline, to satisfy our entire obligation in order to move forward with the process. So I hope that answered your question. If you have a follow-up,
It does,
please.
yeah. I think just the categorization of the units matters right across the RDP, the realistic development potential unmet need, and prospective need, because of the city's obligations vary, right? So understand that we had, a large chunk of the units, I guess, allocated to unmet need in the June 2025 plan, but they have shifted now. And that's a serious change, because now the city's obligations ratchet up.
Yes.
Because they have been recategorized, understanding that the total number is still there, but the allocation across the different kinds of units has changed, which means Summit's obligations to actually make good on these commitments for the 345 units is greater than the position that had been taken in the June 2025 plan.
Yes, and just to reiterate, just because the city calculated its realistic development potential at 18 doesn't mean that Fair Share is going to say, oh, this is great, we accept that. Did you have anyone in Fair Share agree? In any town? When you were calculating?
First of all, Fair Share challenged over 400 municipalities and every single town that did a vacant land adjustment, just based on the concept that you've reduced your obligation by some amount, right? Even though it's baked into the law that they might have helped, right? They were opposed to just the general concept of towns using that mechanism. So what was interesting is that throughout the mediation process, though we had these 3 challenges, the RDP address actually wasn't attacked at all. And stand by the math, it was done accurately, and it didn't become a sticking point at any point in the mediation process, because they had nothing to object to, frankly. But beyond that, the issue that we wrestled with was that we still had to deal with that matter of interpretation that was discussed. We had to deal with 2 live challengers that had, one had an option on a property, one owned the property, that was the Russo site, and we had to deal with them. So that was, what caused us to have to move off of the RDP. And part of the 345, if you go through the charts, were the existing credits that Nancy mentioned. I think 147 were Summit Housing Authority units, which, if you go back to the city's rounds 1 and 2 plans, were credited, because guess what? They serve affordable housing, low and moderate income people, and they were taken out of the plan in the 3rd round because that process was more of the Wild West. It wasn't conducted by CO anymore, and Fair Share Housing Center had an issue with the city's residency preference. So you had credits that were in the plan, that were credited, they were removed, and we were able, through a lot of negotiating, to get those credits back into the plan. So that satisfies a huge chunk of the 345. So once we started putting these numbers together, as Nancy mentioned, plus 87 bonus credits, you could get up to 25% of the total number with bonus credits. It started to make more sense to just say, what do we already have, and put that all together, and that's what came together as part of the plan.
Council President, can I ask one more question?
Okay, yeah.
Sorry. Just want to go back to Sean Pike for a moment. If we had not accepted that land, what is it zoned for today, and what would a developer have required in order to change that zoning and put in apartments?
Right. So as it exists today, it's got a sign out front that's called the Sliding Creek Farm, I think, right? You notice there's a couple of structures there. There's some an equestrian-looking equment, maybe some construction.
I know it's actually there today. I meant the zoning for it.
I'm
Yeah.
going to get there and try
Okay.
to help explain what the likelihood of what could happen there, right? So a few years ago, the Prod 2 zone, which was the old Celgene East campus, was purchased by Onyx and Partners, who were a partner in the Russo deal. They went through the site plan process and got the new Kenview headquarters purchased, and they have other plans for the process, for that campus, which we don't fully know yet, but we expect there to be additional activity there. At some point in time, Onyx and that partner purchased this property. So you have a private entity who purchased private land in the city of Summit. We don't know what their intentions were when they got it, but obviously it was a strategic decision on their part. They didn't just buy the land for, to preserve as a farm. And through the mediation process, one of their principals told us as much. He said, what do you think? This is just going to, remain a stable or whatever, whatever it is, open space. So and frankly, one of the prior iterations of the Onyx plan, before it even turned into this veterans thing, was, hey, we understand the city's position that you think we're doing too much at 190 River Road. How about we divvy it up? We'll keep the market rate units on River Road, and we'll put our affordables there. And for a number of reasons, you can't do that. You can't separate them and have all the market rates here. It's against the law, frankly. I think it's one of the factors. So we said that doesn't work. But it got through the conversation, they decided to make it available to the city and said, you know what, we understand that you need a site for your veterans housing. We'd like to donate to you. And so it became part of that discussion, and that was one of the concessions that they offered.
Right, but I don't think that answers my question, which is, what is it zoned for? Yeah.
So I think it's in the R5 zone, which allows for single and two-family zoning. Again, so what could it be developed? If you went with an as-of-right project, that would mean single and two-family houses. Again, the developer, I don't think, was intending on ever using it for those, but, a lot of things I've heard, well, what would compel the zoning board to have to approve a non-residential development? Fair, nothing really. But the site could have been used as part of this process or subsequent processes to say, I've got another affordable housing site and with a much larger density. And so, again, it solved the problem of, one, finding potentially a spot for the veterans' housing in an area that's where land is highly desirable. Summit, obviously, huge demand to live here, where availability of land is scarce. So trying to solve that problem was a really hard puzzle. You had a developer who was willing to make this concession, and I think the city moving forward, again, we don't have a developer, we don't have a zoning plan, would move forward with a transparent process that would allow the community to help design and give considerable feedback in how it will be developed, how it'll be operated, so that it fits within the community.
And we have an excess of credits now, yes, for round 4?
Yes.
How many?
Yes.
Planned?
We have planned an excess of 23 credits as of right now.
Okay.
And that's, I typically try to plan for excess credits because properties come and go, developers lose options, things like that happen, where you can then, you're not stuck holding the bag, and now you're back in front of the court trying to justify that.
And hypothetically, if, let's just use Bristol Myers Squibb for an example, if for whatever reason that doesn't get developed, what happens at some point in the future when we haven't met our obligation or our agreement with Fair Share Housing?
Sure. So there is what's called a midpoint review, and that's done July 1st of 2030. That's halfway through the 10-year plan, the 10-year round. And we have to report on all of the housing activity above and beyond the monitoring that we have to do every year, where Augusto has the honor of entering everything into the DCA system every year by February 15th. And we have to report, we submit a report to the court, and we make it available to the public on what projects are built, what the status is of everything else. And then at that point, Fair Share Housing Center can come in and file an application against us if they don't think that we've met our obligation up to that point. And other developers can come in and say, this is no longer realistic. It's a very open process. So that would be probably the first huge milestone. There are other milestones in the Fair Share Agreement on specific projects, Franklin Place and I'm blanking, 180 River Road are two that we have a midpoint review that we are to report on the status of those projects and whether they've been built at that point in time, and then at that point we can exchange them for something else. So let's say those two projects specifically, if for whatever reason they don't come to fruition and Bristol Myers Squibb provides more than 20 units that covers that, we can remove those from the plan or we could find another affordable housing site to do those. So.
And then my last question is just, is there a legal reason why the newly elected council members couldn't have been a part of the conversations after the election? Like, could we have signed an NDA and joined the conversation even as listening?
It violates attorney-client privilege because you're elected, but you're not sworn in elected officials for the city, and that's.
So there was no possibility to sign an NDA and join the conversation as an observer? Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Can we make it brief, please, Councilmember Pulowski?
Well,
I know it's asking a lot.
I have some follow-up questions. Tom, I think you said Fair Share challenged 400 municipalities?
Over 400, yeah.
How many
Almost every town that applied.
440, I believe.
There you go.
How many municipalities are in New Jersey?
566.
And how many are immune to this process?
62 urban aid municipalities, right?
Is it that many?
I think so.
Yeah.
42, 62, somewhere
And
there.
they're not necessarily immune to it. They don't have a prospective need obligation. They have a very high rehabilitation obligation. So they still have a Mount Laurel obligation. It's just to rehab units rather than provide new units. They
Right,
can
so-
if they want, but they don't. It's a different.
So most were challenged.
All municipalities in the state, according to Mount Laurel 2, have an obligation. Whether if you're an urban aid municipality, it's rehab. If you're a suburban municipality, it's rehab and new construction.
But most municipalities were challenged.
All of them, yes.
Did ultimately putting 345, our entire unmet need, in our plan, close the door on additional challenges?
Yes, it did.
I had asked, did settling for the entire 345 unmet need close the door, to ultimately agreeing to the 345 number, did that close the door on additional challenges?
Yes, it did. Judge Miller recommended to the vicinage judge that Incline's challenge to our plan be dismissed.
And how many units did Incline want?
It varied, I believe about 250 units on 1.8 acres.
And how many stories?
Right.
It evolved. So at one point, it was eight stories at 300 units. The final iteration was maybe 225 units on 6 stories, but even that fluctuated depending on the week. But that was, for a while, it seemed like, I'll reserve my comments, but it was possible at one point.
It was, I believe, is around 152 units an acre.
Okay. And what's the traditional density in Summit? Maximum?
The highest that we have right now, I believe, is 30, and Russo will be 45.
Okay. And before that, it was about 12?
You had 20, I believe, in the MF multifamily zone.
Okay.
And then the MBC zone was the highest density we had, which was 30 units an acre.
The unmet need number that we were given from Fair Share in December that we accepted.
We don't have an unmet need anymore.
No,
we rent. Yeah.
But the first thing that happened in this process was Fair Share gave every municipality a number, right?
Fair Share didn't. DCA did.
Sorry, DCA.
Yes.
And how many municipalities challenged that number?
I don't know. I had 20 municipalities and none of them did, but it varied. It depended on the data that DCA produced and how they came with the number. I don't know that number. Do you know?
There were quite a few that did, but I'll say that we looked at the factors and the methodology, and when that number was assigned by DCA, I think it was November 2024, we looked at the opportunity to possibly reduce it then, and it wouldn't have made a difference. There wasn't a strong case to be made as far as attacking the methodology, so we accepted that the state did their math correctly, because they did, so the number was 345, and recognizing that the program, the Fair Housing Act still allowed towns to conduct a vacant land analysis, as the city had for rounds 1, 2, and 3.
How many that challenged that number won their challenge?
From my perspective, it became, let's make a deal, and with Fair Share Housing Center, so it became a negotiating process.
Back to the 25% number. What we did was consistent with the statute, right?
Yes. There are at least 4 interpretations out there. We use this strict construction where you don't use outside information. You look at the plain language of the statute, and that's how we developed that analysis.
And how was that analysis done in prior rounds?
There was no 25%. That's new for the amended Fair Housing Act from 2024.
Okay. And is it smart to forego your best arguments just because your adversary who wants something that you don't says differently?
No, not necessarily. We actually, because of how the mediation went, we never actually argued with Fair Share over any of the vacant land analysis information, because we found that we could meet the entire number, so it became moot. So we actually never discussed it with Fair Share, the merits of any of it, and we did not discuss it with the program.
Thank you. You mentioned before that our clock starts ticking on what we may or may not have to do at Shun Pike after Russo gets through some planning process.
Yes, it's based upon when their approvals from the planning board become unappealable. So whatever the number of days after they receive their planning board approval, so long as they don't, there's no prerogative writ action filed against them. Then, so if there is some sort of appeal, it would be after the appeal is over and they receive their final determination.
Can you handicap how long that might take, realistically?
Well, so my understanding is they would need final site plan approval, so not just preliminary.
Mhm.
I don't know what pace they're planning on pursuing. So it's contingent upon moving through that process. I, expect that the application review period would probably take multiple meetings. That's just a guess. And then after that, upon final planning board approval, presumably as an as-of-right project, there'd be that appeal period, whatever the statutory requirement is, number of days afterwards.
So,
It's hard to say.
It's hard to say.
well, the planning board meets once a month, right?
I would say it's not imminent, if that makes any sense.
On the back to the Summit Housing Authority, you mentioned a $175,000 per unit rehab estimate. It's my understanding that that number was obtained when Fair Share Housing was going to require gut rehab for all those units. Is that right?
Yes.
Are they still requiring gut rehab?
No, they are allowing the city and the Summit Housing Authority to create a plan that meets the needs of the Housing Authority residents, and accounts for all the work that has to be done.
So it might not cost $175,000 a unit.
The 175 was calculated by Summit Housing Authority, so that has to do with Glenwood. And that is common area improvements, common facilities improvements, HVAC, plumbing, so that it's an average of 175,000 a unit. It's not specifically in that unit, but that accounts for everything that has to be done at Glenwood. So we are developing the same, with the Housing Authority. They are going to evaluate every Vito Gallo as well as Weaver Street to make sure to do the same analysis. So it's approximately, I would venture a guess that it's probably about the same.
And in terms of the Housing Authority's good faith obligation to pursue funding, that's going to be, the city's going to be involved in that process.
Yes, we, in the term sheet, we agreed to, the Housing Authority and the city would agree to the qualifications before the RFP for the consultant goes out, and the consultant has to communicate the funding possibilities to the city, and there's also yearly monitoring that the Housing Authority has to do on top of all of that. That was a requirement by Fair Share Housing Center. They wanted an annual reporting.
Thank you.
That it? One more, Ms. Lazarusina.
Thank you, Council. I'll put myself on the clock. My daughter let me borrow her timer, so I'm going to give myself just a few minutes here. Ms. Again, I apologize, but I do want to make sure that we learn our history. So with respect to, again, this 25% multiplier, you mentioned that there were 4 different interpretations. With the interpretation that was adopted by the prior council, again, we went from 345 new affordable housing units down to 18, and then with the application of the 25% multiplier, we went down to 5. If we had applied any of the other interpretations, could we have gotten a lower number, or was 5 the lowest number that we could have gotten based on the 4 prevailing interpretations?
I don't think it was 5 at any point. What the 25% represented was 25% of the 345. If that, well, actually, that goes to a number of different interpretations. So the 5, I think you mean, was the 25% of the
RDP.
Of the 18, right, on top. Fair Share's position was that it was actually 25% of the unmet need. So the difference between 345 and what we had at 18 at the time, 25% of that is what they indicated we would have needed. So even had we settled that, frankly, we had enough credits to probably make that work. We still had these challengers we had to deal with, and also recognized the need to get Summit Housing Authority into the plan so that they could be eligible for the funding.
And there were another interpretation was 25% of the total number, which never really made sense to me, but that the 25% of the RDP is based on the fact that it says 25% of the prospective need that has been adjusted. It doesn't say it has been adjusted out, and that's the reason why that interpretation was used. And like I said, that was my firm's position on that.
And just another minute on that. So unmet need is a defined term in the revised third round rules, NJAC 5:97. It's defined. It says exactly what it is. It cannot literally mean what it says in the Fair Housing Act. It can't. So there's intention where people who were involved in the drafting said, well, it was supposed to mean that. Well, that's great, but it says this, and by the way, it cannot mean that by any stretch of the imagination. Be it as it may, we are where we are, but you also have to recognize the pace of this process, that the new legislation was enacted in March of 2024. Municipalities got their affordable housing numbers in November of October 2024, which were finalized in January. So you have between January and June then to develop a plan. I know it was always thought, because this issue is ambiguous, that there would be more robust debate and opportunity to discuss what it actually means. It turns out that, nope, the program went full speed ahead, and you had to decide where you were on the issue. And in the best interest of Summit, we decided that, well, we should amend the plan and minimize impacts, in the interest of the city.
Right, and unmet need has been a term that's been defined for at least 15 years, and so if the legislature had meant an unmet need, they should have used it, so.
I understand that the amendments to the statute were drafted inelegantly and open to interpretation, but it sounds like the answer to my question was no. We took what one might call the most aggressive interpretation of the law to get our number down, to make an attempt to get our number down from 345 to 18 to 5. And then we, through the process from October of 2024 to December of 2025, we dispensed with the legitimate mechanisms to try to get the number of new affordable housing units down to end up back where we started, right? We went from 345 and we ended up back at 345 at the buzzer.
Council President, I have a follow-up.
Wait, hold on one
question.
second. So it was not the most aggressive. It was based upon the plain meaning of the statute. And that's what the Supreme Court would look at, and that's where the interpretation came from. The credits that we used evolved over time. Majority of them were already in our plan, whether they were unmet need or not. The intention was that the Summit Housing Authority would get the funding that they greatly needed. There was no, has to be as aggressive as possible. Our RDP was adjusted using our court-approved presumptive densities from round 3. We used the plain meaning of the statute interpretation of the 25%, and we proceeded accordingly, knowing that we were going to be challenged by Fair Share Housing Center no matter what we did. We were going to be challenged by Russo, and we were going to be challenged by Incline. And we proceeded accordingly, so.
I have a follow-up question.
Yes, okay.
Thank you, Council President. Back in June, what was the number that Fair Share Housing wanted? Was it 87 they came? Was that the number?
That their interpretation is 25% of the unmet need, which would have been 82.
Well, to be clear, we hadn't been in dialogue with Fair Share at that point in the process, but if you accepted their interpretation, the minimum number would have been 87.
The minimum number.
But again, that wouldn't have gotten rid of the challengers, the
No,
developer challengers.
understood. So if you subtract 71 bonus credits and subtract 147 credits for the Summit Housing Authority and subtract 31 credits carried over from round 3, and subtract 7 credits for the renewal of rent controls in existing housing, right? When you clear that all away, the actual number of new affordable units in this plan is 110. But if you go further, what you provided makes it clear that 23 of those are surplus credits. So at the end of the day, if the objective number for round 4 was 87 units, then 87 units is exactly the number Fair Share Housing wanted us to agree with back in June in the first place. By starting at 18 we generated the leverage that was necessary to dictate how those units would be built. Had we capitulated to 87 on day one, so you go in to buy a new car and say, what's the sticker price? 60,000? I'll take it. It never happens. Had we capitulated to 87 on day one, as some suggested, developers would have realized larger and more dense developments. Does that sound right? I know I said a lot, but.
Now, if, even assuming that we took Fair Share Housing Center's interpretation, which I do think is incorrect, that does not mean that Fair Share Housing Center was not going to challenge our plan. They would have challenged, 100% would have challenged our plan. They did in every municipality, regardless of whether, particularly in, as Tom said, in vacant land adjusted towns. I have one out of 20 that did not receive a vacant land, that did a vacant land adjustment that Fair Share did not challenge. Every single one did. That doesn't mean that Fair Share thought our RDP was correct. That doesn't mean that they weren't going to challenge us to increase the overlay zones or anything else, or to try to generate more additional units. So even if we had used Fair Share's interpretation of the 25%, we were going to be challenged by Fair Share.
Exactly. So even if we started at their 25%, their 87, we would have been challenged, and we probably would have had more units, right? Because we started at 87. So starting at 18, and then go through the process of negotiation, we ended up at the same number that they had in the first place.
Right, and there was a justification for the 18. That was our court-approved presumptive density when we calculated our RDP the last time. And that took into account changes within the municipality at the time. We identified the Russo site as contributing to our RDP along with other sites. We created a reasonable RDP for the city of Summit.
Yeah, thank you, because it sounds like to me, if you started at 18, they wanted 87, we ended up at 87. Sounds like good negotiation to me. But anyway, thank you, Council
Okay.
President.
Are we there? Okay, thank you. I know we've had city staff waiting for quite a while. Luckily, the business portion is going to be very short. I say we call a 5-minute break and stretch. We'll be back at 10:22 and see how fast we can get through the business portion. We take our seats, please. We've had our 5 minutes. Yes. We do want to let city staff get home. However.
Nobody wants to stay for this one?
Okay.
I saw it all. I just got to do it with my shoes on.
There was, man. Jamil.
There he is.
Okay, we have no ordinances for introduction this evening, so let's go straight to resolutions. First up is Councilmember Landman.
Thank you, Council President. For the sake of clarity and with permission from the clerk, I'll speak about both finance resolutions together, and then we'll vote on them separately. These resolutions are related to the increase in legal services in 2025. Litigation, property sale negotiations, labor issues, and reviewing OPRA requests drove up the expenses above what we had budgeted. The city originally approved a budget of $250,000 in December 2024, then increased it to $350,000, and now we need an additional $18,500 to cover the legal services for 2025. We have two resolutions. The first is to transfer money into the account we use to pay our legal bills, and the second modifies the contract with our law firm to allow us to pay for their services. So with that, resolution number 12390 authorizes the city to transfer $18,500 from the finance salaries and wages account to the legal contract services account to cover the additional legal expenses incurred in 2025. I move to adopt this resolution by roll call vote.
Okay, do I hear a second?
Second?
Okay, do we have any comments from the public, and starting with our residents? No. Comments from other members of the public? Comments from council? All right. Then, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Boyer?
Aye.
Mr. Crisafulli?
Aye.
Ms. Kelmanson?
Aye.
Ms. Landman?
Aye.
Ms. Saracena?
Aye.
Mr. Pulowski?
Aye.
President Tote?
Aye. Councilmember Landman.
Resolution 12385 authorizes the city to add $18,500 to the 2025 contract with Cleary Giacobbe, bringing the total contract for 2025 services to $385,500. I move to adopt this resolution.
Do I hear a second?
Second?
Do we have any comments from our residents? Comments from other members of the public? Comments from council?
Council President.
Yes, Councilmember Boyer.
I will be quick. I just want to make a statement that all of these legal fees for affordable housing, for some of these lawsuits, and I mean, that could pay for a lot of units being rehabbed, like $365,000, upping the cost for our legal fees. It's just a, man, hint.
Okay.
That's it. I'm good.
Okay, these legal fees are not for affordable housing, is my understanding, Councilmember Boyer. But,
Well, these are Jacoby's, right? But the
Yes.
ones prior to that was, right?
This is all Jacoby's.
this is all Jacoby.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. On to capital projects and community services. Councilmember Crisafulli.
Thank you, Council President Till. As chairperson of the Capital Projects and Community Services Committee, I will introduce tonight's resolutions for consideration. The first is resolution number 12388 to amend the professional service agreement for the 2025 Affordable Housing Planner Services, additional fees in the amount of $7,000. This amount was already budgeted in 2025, and this approval would close out last year's bill for services. I move to adopt the resolution.
Second.
Okay. Comments from our residents? Comments from other members of the public? Comments from members of council? Okay. All in favor of this resolution?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Back to you, Councilmember Crisafulli.
Thank you, Council President. The second resolution is number 12325 to authorize a grant application submission for the 2026 Sustainable Jersey Grants Program and to the PSEG Foundation to purchase an EV charging station for the back lot at City Hall to hopefully move forward with a component of the Summit Community Energy Plan adopted by the city under Resolution 40951 on December 5th, 2023. I move to adopt the resolution.
Second.
Okay. Any comments from residents in the audience? From other members of the public? From council? Yes, Councilmember Pulowski.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I'm glad we're getting a charging station. It's going to be really important that we have some of these for our infrastructure going forward. And it's my understanding that if we were to put some solar on some city buildings, they would throw in some charging stations as part of the deal. So just want to reiterate that we ought to be looking into that.
Thank you. Other comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Councilmember Crisafulli.
Thank you, Council President Till. The third and final resolution under CAPS, Capital Projects and Community Services Committee, is Resolution 12371 to appoint a part-time plumbing and mechanical subcode official. The closed session discussion approved the routine hiring of a replacement for a city official who retired in December. I move to adopt the resolution.
Second.
Any comments from our residents in the audience? From other members of the audience? From members of council? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Community programs and parking services. Ms. Kelmanson.
Thank you, Council President. This is Resolution ID 12376. This resolution authorizes the execution of a revised agreement with Park Mobile. The agreement originally awarded to Park Mobile on December 2nd, 2025, contained revisions that were not agreed upon. Park Mobile included a line item stating that the city would pay an additional 5 cents per transaction in addition to the 35-cent transaction fee paid by users. This revision has been removed from the agreement, and a vote is required to authorize execution of the new agreement. I move to adopt this resolution.
Second.
Any comments from residents? From other members of the public? Comments from members of council? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Back to you, Ms. Kelmanson.
Thank you again, Council President. This is Resolution ID 12377, and this resolution authorizes the submission of the grant application to New Jersey Department of Community Affairs Local Recreation Improvement Grant Program and authorizes execution of the grant agreement. The city is applying for a grant of $75,000 to update the aging playground equipment at Memorial Park Playground. I move to adopt this resolution.
Second.
Any comments from our residents? From other members of the public? From council? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Safety and health, over to you, Councilmember Pulowski.
Thank you. Just get to the right page. Okay, this is Resolution 12375 to authorize the execution of IT services agreement with QuickTex for the police department. Our law enforcement uses an IT management program, and I guess our last agreement has come due. We put out we got 9 bids on it, and QuickTex won the day. So I move to adopt this resolution.
Second.
Any comments from our residents? From other members of the public? From members of council? Yes, Councilmember
Council
Chris
President, it's an IT contract for the police, and making sure our basic systems are working well, I think is really important. If just a quick thumbs up or thumbs down from Chief Peters, is this a vendor that you'd like to continue with?
Through you, Council President. Yes, as a matter of fact, QuickTex has been our IT vendor for the last several years. The fact of the matter is, actually, they've been getting paid through our contract with Mountain Valley Emergency Communication Center, which is our regional dispatch center, which is in New Providence. You guys will be hearing a proposal on possibly moving that dispatch center back to Summit at some point over the next 12 to 18 months. So in anticipation of that, it was in the best interest of everyone for us to now acquire those services and pay for them directly before that contract is up. That being said, QuickTex is also the IT vendor for the city of Summit as well. So we did go, they are not on state contracts, so we went out to bid through a request for proposal. I think Councilman Pulowski was correct in when he said we had 9 responses, and QuickTex came in as the most cost efficient. And again, they're very familiar with our systems. They've worked with us regularly for several years, so we're very comfortable with this contract. Any other questions? Go.
Thank you. Any other comments from council? No. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Back to you, Councilmember Pulowski.
Thank you. This is Resolution ID number 12393 to appoint a new police officer. We interviewed a fine young man named Marvins Valerie. He'll be coming to us from the Irvington Police Department. He's, like I said, an impressive young man, and I think we're lucky to have him. The mayor and members of the safety committee all like him, so do the police. and we think it'll fit in very well here in Summit. With that, I move to adopt this resolution.
Second.
Any comments from our residents? From other members of the public? From members of council? You look eager, Mr. Boyer, or am I misinterpreting it?
No, I was just going to say that, those Essex County, municipalities better be careful because we're taking all our police in Irvington and Newark and East Orange. Some good police out there. So I told the secret, Peters. I told the secret.
Okay. Any other comments? No? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. All right, then I believe city staff, you are free to.
Have consent agenda first.
Oh, they have to sit through the. I'm
No,
sorry.
they don't have to,
No?
but if you.
Okay.
I mean,
Okay,
up to
well,
you.
let's move on to the consent agenda. Hopefully, this won't take long. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
Council President, for the
Yes.
finance part, do we have to take a roll call vote on that?
No, we do not.
Okay.
Councilmember Boyer.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Any comments from our residents in the audience? From other members of the public? From members of council? All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Ms. Kalmanson. You were about to say something?
I was. It was just a quick, for anybody who was looking at the packet for the permissions granted, there was a typo in the Juneteenth flag. It said June 19th through, I think it said 1 or 11, and I clarified with David Guida. It's June 19th through 21st. So if anybody's looking at those and wondering when the Juneteenth flag is going to be up, those are the dates. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No? Okay, thank you. And good night, city staff. Thank you for waiting it out. Okay, so at this point in the meeting, members of the public have an opportunity to comment on anything. And I'd like to start, if we have residents who'd like to make comment, and remember, we've got a 3-minute limit. We do have a resident waiting to make a comment, sir.
Oh, is it, yeah, but, just relax. All you have to do is ask.
Sir, the request is just that residents go first.
Can you back up? Can you please just give me a little distance? Just relax. Lead or leave? What I need to say is, you can ask and I'll honor your request.
Would you
not-
please allow the resident to make her comment first?
I always let residents go first.
Thank you,
So
sir.
you ask. It's not enforceable. That's the whole point. Thank you. I always let them.
Just-
Tracy
Just for
Keegan.
the record, that is the councilwoman's request, that residents be offered the opportunity to go first, and then other members of the public.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tracy Keegan. I've been a resident of Summit since 1994. Excuse me, I moved to Summit first in 1994. I've been back and forth. The Round 4 plan resulted in the most serious challenge Summit has faced in decades, one that will shape our town for generations. And for the last 2 years, council was controlled by Republicans who put Summit at risk. So to Mayor Fagan and the Republican majority from last year, this outcome did not happen to you. It is happening to us because of your decisions. You often say that you're just volunteers, as though that excuses your accountability. If you trusted the lawyers without question, why? And if you believe they were giving you bad advice, why didn't you fire them? There are over 500 municipalities in New Jersey. Many are run by volunteer councils. Many are run by Republicans. And yet only 16 towns had their immunity challenged in the way we did. Even my beloved hometown of New Providence, Republican-controlled for decades until last year, where we elected one Democrat, managed to comply without being sued. You now blame Democrats in Trenton, but Mount Laurel has been settled law since the 1970s and is cemented in the New Jersey Constitution. Disagreeing with the law does not excuse ignoring it. You had years to plan. Instead, 3 of you went to Trenton and made outrageous statements that made national news. For 2 years, you held the majority. You had inside information. You spoke with developers. You knew the risks. In June, you gambled on a plan so aggressive and flawed that Fair Share Housing dismantled it. and improper vacant land analysis, double counted units, ineligible credits, basic math errors. By December, you reversed course and abandoned the vacant land analysis you relied on months earlier. And now we're looking at several hundred new units. You removed the residency preference for our housing authority, pushing aside Summit families and seniors who have waited their turn. You are using the Affordable Housing Trust Fund to pay for renovations that could cost many times more, while hurting the very families that we should be protecting. We know you guys know how to raise money. You raised $1 million for Tatlock overnight. But instead, you traded the Summit residency requirement for $1 million from Russo, which won't anywhere near cover the cost, $175 per unit. $1 million divided by $175,000, what does that get you? We all remember what you said while you were still in the majority, that you worked hard, that the community would be pleased, that you protected Summit from irresponsible growth, that builders' remedy warnings were fear-mongering. Those all turned out to be empty promises. So don't hide behind lawyers, don't blame Trenton, don't blame your Democratic colleagues who were either in the minority or not even elected when you created this mess. If this was the best you could do, it's malpractice, and Summit deserved better.
Thank you. Any other residents? Yeah.
It's quite painful this time of night. Carol Pactang, Summit, 234 Summit Avenue. Oh, sorry. By the way, I will be reaching out to the city clerk because I think there's I have a invisible.
Speak into the microphone.
Oh, sorry. I have an invisible disability of long COVID and staying this late, standing to speak, and the lighting in here is quite difficult to deal with. So I came to thank those folks here that came to our vigil at St. John's Church the other week, including President Claire Toth, Michelle Kamenson, Jackie LaSaracina, and also Assemblymember Vinnie Carney also came to our vigil. Past council members, including Marjorie Fox, Greg Vartan, Andy Miniger, and Susan Harrison also were in attendance. I highlight these past and current elected officials because I think it's very important that our community see that our elected folks are coming to support them because our residents are scared. I heard some quite alarming stories in addition to those that I've already heard of Summit residents being taken advantage of, intimidated, and harassed by both ICE and also by lawyers that are coming to say they're helping residents deal with immigration issues, yet being taken advantage of financially in these situations. I really urge, we're going to have some upcoming other events that are focused on action-oriented events and events to make our community feel safe. And I really urge all of you to try to be in attendance and really am inviting you to come, especially Mayor Fagan. I think I would really love to see some sort of statement made by you because our community members are very scared and legitimately so. And this is not political. This is about taking care of our community. This is about addressing the needs of our community. This is about protecting our community, again, which is all the things that you all are elected to do for our community members. And so, we are going to be planning multiple events that are focused on ways. I have had like 20 plus community members that have reached out to me personally, and that's just an N of one. Folks that have reached out to me of how do I help? How do I volunteer? How do I donate money to this effort? Because they are recognizing that our community is hurting. I would like to see that effort publicly being made by all of you in some way, shape, or form, because I think that really sends a message to our community that all of you are thinking of them in this time. That is very difficult for so many folks here in Summit that are being directly affected. And I think that would go a really long way towards our folks here in town feeling that you guys are addressing their needs. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pactang. Any other?
Good evening, Diego Hoyk, Argyle Court. Council President Toth, are you carrying your passport or your birth certificate today? How about you, Mayor Fagan? Councilman Boyer, are you carrying your passport or your birth certificate today? How about you, Chief Peters? Bob, Michelle, is anybody carrying any proof of citizenship today on their persons? You're all elected officials. I presume that you all know that we have First Amendment right to speak and communicate in whichever way we please, including, for example, speaking in Spanish, speaking in French, speaking in whatever language you want to communicate with each other, with our kids. This nation has had a very unfortunate history of racial profiling. Is that correct, Reverend Harriel? The reason I bring these things up is because the way immigration enforcement has been handled for the last couple of months is not just a threat to people who are illegally in this nation. Now, illegal immigration is a civil crime and it needs to be dealt with. Criminal aliens, of course, they're criminals, they need to be treated like criminals. But we're right now in a situation where none of you carries your passports or your birth certificates for the simple reason that you're not afraid that somebody's going to ask you to show your papers, like it happened in Nazi Germany back then. We used to make fun of the scenes where people were being asked to show papers. Now, individuals who look the wrong way, who speak the wrong language in public with their kids, are being detained and being treated as guilty unless they can prove their own innocence. I want you to think about that for a moment. And for what? For the crime of speaking in a different language to their kids? We've had Native Americans in the Western states being detained on suspicion of immigration violations. Think about that for a moment. We have many of you have last names that are definitely not Native American last names. Claire is an example, Bob is another one, Michelle. So what happens if, say, whoever was Mr. Pawlowski who came however many generations ago was actually...
Thank you, Mr.
I'm out of time, but think about that. Because we're actually having issues in the way citizens are being treated.
Mr. Hoyt. Any other residents? Yeah.
John Calabrese, Yale Street. I had something prepared to speak tonight. I'm glad nobody else is here. But I'm really hoping that this statement fosters more communication about what's going on in East Summit right now. So I'm here tonight to voice some concerns about the proposed low-income and/or veterans housing project at the former farm located at the end of Shumpike Road in East Summit. As with many people who spoke here tonight and at the last council meeting, my family has lived in East Summit for generations. My grandparents immigrated here from Italy during World War II and settled on Orchard Street. My father and I were both born and raised on Orchard Street. Our kids were born and raised on Orchard and Yale Streets, all a few blocks from the proposed project. To say I have a vested interest in East Summit is an understatement. East Summit has a certain fabric to it. The houses have a look to them, some from the early 1900s, some from the 50s, 70s, and 80s. All 1- or 2-story houses with decent setbacks and backyards. This is what should be built on the former farm lot. modest houses to match the fabric of the area, maintaining the same lot coverages, setbacks, and building heights as the rest of the Ivy area houses. Please do not shoehorn a huge multi-story monstrosity into our lovely community just to satisfy a state requirement so a developer can get top dollar across town. I do not mind low-income or veterans housing as long as it blends seamlessly into our neighborhood. I do think it's a little tone-deaf that veterans housing be put within earshot of a gun range that is operated spring, summer, and fall. Please keep our community involved and updated as you can and before any permanent decisions are made. And while I'm discussing projects in East Summit, I would like to ask about the status of Bryant's Pond dredging project. Is it complete? What was the scope of the work? At the moment, it looks awful and half completed. Almost like they ran out of money and walked away. Any information would be greatly appreciated. Thank you for your time and everything you do for Summit.
Thank you, sir. Yeah. Other residents? Other members of the public?
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Council. I will be remaining anonymous. All right, so one thing I want to mention, only 3 minutes, so I'll tackle one issue. So one issue I want to mention is the Supreme Court in 2024, I believe it was, Lindkey versus Freed was a case that says the social media platforms, when you represent yourself in your official capacity, it's considered a public forum. Ratcliffe, O'Connor versus Garnier is companies with that. It's another case. So, Council President, I noticed throughout the week that you shut commenting off on your Facebook, on your official Facebook page here. It's bad enough I'm getting Rosa Parks, getting the back of the bus. But I let residents go first anyway, so yeah, so you're violating the First Amendment by doing that. And you have one post here, it says, talking about the live Q&A with the mayor, I welcome the opportunity to meet with residents and look forward to hearing your questions, concerns, and priorities, but not on the post, because commenting is shut off. So, I mean, the way this would be fought out in court, in terms of, it's a public forum. So, when you originally allowed commenting, and then you decided that you're going to shut them off, it becomes a liability issue for the town. Because you could possibly be held liable in court for violating the First Amendment. That's the way I would, if I was a lawyer, that's how I would argue it, because it originally was on. So, content neutral, viewpoint discrimination, it's like oil and vinegar. They go together, but you originally had it, you originally allowed it, and then you shut it off. We have another post here. Picked out a couple favorites. Live virtual Q&A. I hope you tune in, ask questions in the comments, but there's no commenting on the post. So, I think if it was to go to court, you would lose because you originally had it on. It was originally on. And then it was shut off. And it's not content neutral because you're doing that on certain posts where there originally was commenting. So I would
Thank
do
you.
the right thing and
Thank you, sir.
restore the people's First Amendment right to redress their grievances with government when they're representing themselves in their official capacity.
Thank you, sir. Do we have other comments from members of the public? Comments from council? Seeing, oh, Mr. Pulowski.
Sorry. Okay, affordable housing, I have a few comments. So I see there's a bunch of folks back from the Ivy League again tonight. At the last meeting, people from that neighborhood seemed pretty certain of two things. One, that the city was planning to build an apartment building, and two, that we were going to be voting on zoning at that meeting. Just want to say that neither one of those were ever true, and whoever provided that information was ignorant of the facts. And I'll just add that at least the reason that I pushed so hard to get that plot of land during our negotiations is to prevent a big apartment building from ever being built there, and not the opposite. Second, on affordable housing, just want everybody to know, when we're talking about transparency, that there's a difference between what happened in round 3 and what's happening now in round 4. People on social media have been very critical of the process and the lack of transparency that we've had with it, and rightly so. We as a council have been hamstrung with what we could say. Broad Street West, to contrast, was a voluntary project. Council took it upon itself to make something happen there, or to try to make something happen there. We were told things like we couldn't possibly satisfy our round 3 obligations unless we do Broad Street West. And after a changing of the guard, new council rolled up its sleeves and finished off round 3 with scattered sites around the city. And we even ended up with a surplus to help us in the future. Then there came new legislation. Trenton created a judicial process called the program. Confidentiality attached, and we couldn't share as much as we would have liked. This is not unique to Summit. The same calls for transparency can be heard across the state. Who's to blame? I'm sorry, Ms. Keegan. Trenton. And the affordable housing industrial complex. You see, public engagement slows down development and delays profits. And while it breaks my heart to have unwanted development forced upon us, the plan positions Summit well for the future, without, or at least with less of a specter of builder's remedy or such stout requirements going forward. 3, my third comment on affordable housing goes to Claire's statement, Council President Toth's statement on affordable housing. I didn't comment on it at the last meeting because I thought that others covered the points that I would have made very well, but a number of residents have asked me to personally share my views, so here they are. Given where we were in the process, I thought that the statement was unnecessary, if not reckless. Criticizing our initial plan in the midst of our negotiations didn't sit well with me. Council President Toth's statement that we are building 345 new affordable units was false. As Jim Bennett calculated for us, and Councilman Boyer did again tonight, we're really talking about 87 new affordable units. The balance are credits for existing units or bonus credits for units for veterans, special needs, and the like. a third point on this, I keep hearing from my fellow council members a desire to develop a positive working relationship. And I think blaming the Republicans, which also was in that statement, for Summit's affordable housing woes is directly at odds with that concept. So is exchanging safety-related emails without copying the safety chair, Ms. Kalmanson. And so is changing up the historical minute without even telling the person who made it happen for the past couple of years. So is removing committee agenda items requested by a council member on that committee without telling them, Ms. LaSaracina. And so is changing a Summit Housing Authority appointment without consulting all council members, or at least telling them. So I hope all the talk about wanting to have good relationships among all of the council is not just talk. And I look forward to fostering a more productive, cooperative environment going forward. As for the genesis of all the forced development, we all know who's responsible. You've probably seen riding the train from time to time the big sign in Trenton that says, "Trenton makes and the world takes." And I say that indeed Trenton does make ludicrous legislation on affordable housing. And the developers in the affordable housing industrial complex certainly take, and municipalities choke. Maybe they should change their sign. We haven't talked much about the budget yet, and I know it's a huge lift, and it's always a work in progress. I haven't gotten many updates, and I know, again, it's a long and complicated process, but I urge the Finance Committee to keep the uptown cameras on the safety budget. When I campaigned, I heard a lot of talk about technology. Technology is the future of law enforcement. We need technology. And technology costs money, but it's something that we've been talking about for a long time now, and I'd hate to keep kicking that can down the road. Strategically placed cameras uptown are an important piece of technology. Again, we've been planning them for some time. And God forbid, just imagine a fire call during rush hour while Maple Street is closed for outdoor dining. Don't we want our professionals to be able to identify the inevitable traffic jams before they leave the station? Another budget issue is the dog park. It was in a preliminary budget. I don't know if it's going to make the final cut, but before that hits the cutting room floor, please read all the comments that we received. It was a big hit, and it helped to foster new friendships and bring the city together. And my last comment is go see Big Fish at the high school, February 25th to the 28th. They put on a great show, and it's a great story. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other council comments?
Council
Ms. Landman.
President. Thank you. I would like to address comments tonight from Dr. Pak-Tang and Mr. Hoik, as well as others who have reached out to me privately. Many of us are feeling unsafe and scared and uncertain about what to do. Upstanders that I know are afraid of calling attention to our city. Neighbors are unsure how to talk to one another about whether they're in need. And kids are scared to come home to find an empty apartment. And, you know, amongst my family and friends, we are talking through various scenarios with our spouses and kids and evaluating scenarios of what would we do if ... Everyone has a different answer to those questions because we all have a different set of circumstances and responsibilities and risks that we're managing. But I want to say that if you or someone you know needs help, please reach out to us. We can and will share accurate information to the extent that we have it. We will connect residents to trusted legal and social resources and stand firm in protecting the safety, due process, and basic human rights for everyone who calls this city home. Thank you.
Other comments?
Council President.
Yes, Mr. Boyer.
So I want to take a moment tonight to recognize the real and meaningful win for East Summit. Through the efforts of Congressman Tom Kean, federal funding has been secured for long-needed sidewalk improvements along Glenside Avenue. 2 years ago, we did some photos there and with Congressman Kane and a bunch of neighbors, and last year it wasn't approved. I think it was about $500,000. Yeah, $500,000. It wasn't approved last year, so the neighbors kind of lost hope. I kind of lost hope a little bit, but Congressman Kane got the funding. This isn't a abstract policy. These are real sidewalks on real streets serving real people in our community. What makes this especially important to acknowledge is that this support came despite years of political attacks aimed at Congressman Kane by local Democrats. And yet, when East Summit needed help, when Glenside Avenue needed an investment, he didn't hesitate. He didn't ask who voted for him. He didn't condition support or party loyalty. He most certainly didn't do that with me when I talked to him. He just said, Mr. Border, what do you need? But you know, sidewalks are not partisan. Public safety is not ideological. Infrastructure does not belong to a party. It belongs to the residents who rely on them every day. Here in Summit, our obligation is simple. Do what's best for the city. Do right by every neighborhood. We work with anyone, Republican, Democrat, or Independent, who is willing to put Summit first. And when someone delivers tangible results for our residents, especially for communities that too often wait the longest, integrity requires that we acknowledge it. So tonight, I want to thank Congressman Kane for the partnership and for recognizing the needs of East Summit. And by the way, if Congressman Kane was a Democrat congressman, I would recognize him tonight as well. If I had picked up the phone, called, and he got $500,000 to put sidewalks on Glenside Avenue, I don't care what political party you from. You helping the people. Who cares? So wrapped up in the politics. I know, as a politician, I'm saying that, right? I can't stand it. Summit Housing Authority, real quick, because people can get up here and just say all kind of nonsense. So there's 48 units or residents that we did not remove the residency requirement for in the senior building. Why? Because if you actually know Summit and know the people who live there, there is a transition that happens when you live on Glenwood or Weaver and you raise your children and they leave high school. The transition typically is you go to the senior building. We know that. I know that. So I'm not going to let that happen, right? So those 48 seniors who are looking to get into the senior building, that's intact, didn't touch it. Now, the family resident requirement for Glenwood and Weaver, I don't know one person that's ever seen the waiting list. Nobody's seen it. I don't even know if it exists. I asked for it, didn't get it. I know commissioners who asked for it, they didn't get it. I know people who've moved in to Glenwood and Weaver Street that's never lived in Summit before. So to say we're not going to give you $1 million and all this other aid so that you can fix all the units up because of a residency requirement that you don't even know that's being upheld, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. I mean, listen, give credit where credit is due. All right? 195 units being rehabilitated. That's a big deal. We got to stop acting like it's not. That's a huge deal. If there's one thing that I did up here, I would be happy if this happens. That means that I did my job. hooked up the place where I came from. What better responsibility than someone being on council, living in those areas, to now on council, to remember where you came from and make that a priority in your life. Bob talked about the cameras. I'm big on police and security. To not have cameras in a certain section of our town is irresponsible. If that's been taken out of the budget, that is ridiculous. The dog park, listen, all you have to do is look at all the surveys for the dog park. In Summit, in the summertime, there's not a lot of people around, right? That dog park had brought many people like happiness. Happiness. It was a meeting place. People would go there, they'd get coffee at the Village Green. Most people had bags, so it lifts up shopping. And the Village Green is supposed to be a gathering point, right? And how much does the dog park cost? 50,000? How much is our budget? 168 million? Is that something like that? All right. I think we can afford a dog park, so hopefully we can get that. So the whole, I hear gamble a lot. Like we've been gambling with the fair share housing. Just want to tell the public that people can get up here and they could say like whatever they want. It doesn't have to be true. You can say anything, right? That's how America is. Thank God we're Americans. So you can get up there and you could say just whatever you want. Don't believe everything you hear. Do your own research. Because I'm sorry to say, right? But people lie, and they lie a lot, because a lot of this is about winning elections and it's about politics, but it's not about telling the truth. It is Black History Month, and I did have something written, but I'm not going to go through it all tonight because it's 11:12. But I will say that I want to give people a different perspective about how others think, especially Black folks. There is a professor, economist, Glenn Loury. Last name is spelled Loury. First name is Glenn. He was born in Chicago, 1948. He was the first indigenous Black American to be a professor at Harvard University. He's an economist. He has a YouTube channel. He brings a really different way of thinking, but it's very open dialogue. Some of his quotes: dignity is not negotiable. Judge policies by results, not by rhetoric. I like that one the best. And we can argue without hating. That's a second runner-up. I probably have a lot more to say, but since it's late, thank you, Council President.
Thank you, and I'm sure you'd want a larger audience. Do we have other council comments? Ms. Saracena.
Thank you, Council President. I will put myself back on the clock here. We are celebrating Kindness Month here in Summit, and this week we are encouraging people to be kind to our neighbors. Even just the simple act of saying hello to someone you don't know can boost their mental health and actually boost your own mental health. So we'll have more suggestions coming out over the course of the month. As has been noted, we are celebrating Black History Month, and I want to just lift up a really great opportunity. The Summit High School Black Student Union is having an art exhibit and fundraiser on Friday, February 20th at 6 p.m. in the Summit High School. Student-contributed art will be available for display. It's just a suggested donation of $10, and the funds will benefit both the Student Union as well as the Make-A-Wish Foundation. So, and that's Friday, February 20th at 6 p.m. at Summit High School. Appreciate very much the comments that have been made this evening on on immigration enforcement, everyone spoke very eloquently, and I have been struggling to find adequate words with respect to what's going on in immigration enforcement in our country to speak to the fear and the loss that people are feeling, to speak to our need to protect the children of our community, to want to protect our neighbors and our local businesses. Because I think there really aren't adequate words, right, to speak to the moment that we are in. But as has been mentioned, there is opportunity for action, and we are taking steps, and we should continue to take steps to help our neighbors in whatever way is needed. So if you know someone who is in need, or if you are in a position to be one of the helpers of providing school supplies, groceries, whatever the need may be, please do come talk to us. And we will confidentially help to try to address the need to the best of our ability. Summit is a beautifully diverse community, and that diversity is a strength that we hold dear, and it is part of our job to protect it, and that's what we're here to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Ms. Galmanson.
Thank you, Council President. Regarding ICE, I know a lot of the community doesn't feel safe right now, and what we're witnessing happening in the country is heartbreaking, and I understand why people don't feel safe. And that's one of our most important roles, is to make sure that our community is safe and that our community feels safe. So we need to talk about this in the Safety Committee again, and try to identify some ways that we can make the community safe in this moment. I don't appreciate the accusations that we are not working with Councilman Pawlowski. Last year, we were in the minority, and Council President Toth and we didn't know what was happening a lot of the time until the last minute. You know, I mean, the information was gatekept from us, and there was a time when I got a phone call from Councilman Pawlowski, and he was asking me what I thought about something, and I was thinking about it. I said, "But my vote doesn't even really matter. You already have the votes, right?" And he said, "Yeah." So, I'll tell you what it was later. But so we went from a situation last year where a couple people felt like we felt like we were being kept out of the loop, and that nobody wanted to really inform us until the last minute about things. And now, you know, I think it's a different feeling when you're in the minority, I guess. Regarding the dog park, DCP doesn't have those comments. Resident feedback, and I asked if they had them, and they said no. So I'm going to try to get them from Aaron, because I haven't seen any of the feedback. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay.
I can't speak for anybody else, but Claire and Michelle, you know that I called you and told you about things and talked to you about things all last year.
Okay. Let's just put a lid on this for now. Thank you. Mr. Crisafulli.
Just one last word, Council President. Thank you. I really appreciate the comments about bipartisanship from Bob and from Jamel, and I won't get into a tit for tat on anybody's behavior here, but none of us is perfect on this front. I'm hearing it from residents all over Summit. I agree that we should respect each other, and we should stop making up lies that get repeated and amplified and repeated again and again and again, even from the campaign on social media. In terms of partisanship, there are voices that are trying to blame me as the new guy for this affordable housing settlement. On that point, we simply need to set the record straight. As we heard tonight, nearby towns that are similar to Summit took a different approach and had far more favorable treatment, and their residents enjoyed greater transparency and ability to make public comments. They were not blindsided, as we have seen here in Summit. So that's really what I'm saying. I want to have bipartisanship, but it's a two-way street, and what's said by ourselves matters and the way we conduct ourselves matters. Thank you.
So we can each move first to be bipartisan.
Council President.
Has everyone else made a first round? Yes.
I find it funny that we say, let's not be political and let's not throw stones or whatever. And you made this whole speech, and then you just say, there were all these towns and the Republicans messed up and the blindsided and like, I mean, if you're gonna make a speech about not being political and be nonpartisan, just make the speech about brotherly love. But then you throw daggers in the second half of the speech. It doesn't work like that. I think people have ears, they can hear. Like, just because you talk nice doesn't mean that you ain't throwing shots. Like, come on, man.
Okay.
I'm just telling the truth, Jamel, that's all.
Thank you,
You
gentlemen.
just said that you weren't gonna lie, so.
Thank you, gentlemen. Okay. I am just calling council member comments closed. I am just going to say thank you for sticking it out as long as you have, everyone who is still here. This is a discussion. It isn't over. And do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second? Second. In favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Good night.